Good evening, everyone. We have a quorum for our August work session, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Do I have my agenda? I do. All right. So calling the meeting to order, and now we will move to Agenda Item 2, roll call. Superintendent Hooker.
Yes, Madam Chair. Ms. Heidi Hensley, Ms. Claudia Butt,
Here.
Ms. Linda Davis,
Here.
Dr. Patricia Yeager,
Here.
Mr. Tim Denson, Dr. Mumby Anderson,
Here.
Dr. Lakeisha Gant, Ms. Nicole Hull, and Mr. Mark Evans.
Here.
All right, thank you. So we do have a quorum, and we'll move to Item 3, the Board President Report. I've got a few items, so just kind of be patient with me as we go through the list. Since it's the beginning of the school year, there's absolutely a lot of housekeeping. Okay, so I know you all remember that we drafted out a board manual using many of the former B policies. That document has been shared with you as of June, I believe it was, but we will re-share the document so that it's on the top of your inbox. If you could, please look through that document by September. And if you have any recommended changes, comments, suggestions, please make them in the document. And we can circle back in September if there are any any items that we need to discuss further before we have a formal board manual from that document. Ms. Palmer will use that board manual along with some best practices from GSBA, as well as just like a welcome letter from the board and the board president, and compile these 3 items into the official board manual that will be reviewed and approved at our October retreat. Ms. Mary Bagby will be the first person to receive that board manual, so it's really important that we get all of this done, preferably before the end of the year, but sooner rather than later, most definitely. So look out for that board manual that will be reshared with you. Speaking of retreat, we have the October 18th through 20th as the official dates for our retreat. Those dates were determined in March. Hopefully they are still good with the majority of the board. I know there is one member who has issues with us potentially traveling to Jekyll Island for our retreat. What I would like to do is get a temperature read from those members who are here, and we can poll other members as they arrive about the travel to Jekyll for the 2 days for our retreat. I am still very much in favor of doing that. I think it'd be a great opportunity for, team building. I do know that, Mr. Denson won't be able to make it. Potentially, Ms. Hensley will not be able to make it. So it does kind of pose an issue of not having the full board there if we do decide that Jekyll is still on the table. It's already been budgeted. The cabinet has already been notified that we might be doing this. So I do kind of want to get a temperature of how you all feel about doing this. Thoughts? Okay, Dr. Yeager is still a yay. Others?
Did she?
I just put my thumbs up, that's all.
Oh, okay. So it's October 18th through the,
20th.
so that's Thursday through,
Well, it's Friday through Sunday.
Friday through Sunday in Jekyll.
Ms. Palmer and I did talk about setting aside Thursday as a potential travel date, and people can check in on Thursday, and then we have the full day, Friday and Saturday for our retreat, and then check out Sunday. So that is an option. If people would prefer to just travel on Friday and meet with us early in the morning, that's an option too. But we did talk about having Thursday as that buffer for travel and check-in.
So I had the joy of going with my church, the women of my church, to Fort Yarrow, which is 30 minutes away, and a beautiful facility there. If the distance becomes an issue and if we start losing participation, It felt like we were remote. It felt like we were away from home. And again, it's a beautiful park. It's not very large, but the conference facility was excellent, the event place. So if the distance becomes an issue, then I would suggest maybe looking for someplace closer.
Okay. Any others have thoughts? Dr. Hooker, do you have any thoughts? Okay. Yes, Dr. Gant?
I guess in support of what Dr. Yeager and Ms. Linda said, I think it still works. I do want to suggest that, or have us consider that when we schedule these retreats, the idea is that all board members are there. And so I won't say it defeats the purpose. I know that that is something over the past many years, life happens, so I'm not saying that. But part of the reason for the retreat is for us to be able to continue to work on building our capacity as a governance team by building relationships. And so I'm definitely still in support of attending and will be there. And at the same time, it's disappointing that we're here again this year. It seems to be a pattern, and I know a lot of the things are beyond our control. And so, if we plan to go and one or two more board members are unable to make it, I don't know how fruitful, it will be, or how much it'll put us towards our goal as a whole board. Type of thing. So I don't know. I'm a little bit, I definitely plan on attending, and I've, blocked that time out, but I'm also a little bit uncertain if that means that 7 members are going, and if we're going to be able to use it for what it's meant to be.
Yeah, I'm on the same page as you. The other issue is if we do manage to get a facilitated training, we cannot get the 6 hours of whole board training if all members are not there. So I 100% agree with you, Dr. Gant. I will propose, and Ms. Palmer, we can have conversations about this, that maybe we can move it to a closer location. So perhaps, as Ms. Davis suggested, doing something that's maybe 30 minutes away or an hour away to give members the flexibility to pop out if they have to be somewhere the next day. So we'll talk further about that, and maybe that's a good, what's the word? Compromise. Okay, thank you all. That leads to facilitated professional development at the board retreat. Are there any suggestions from the membership about what you would like to see at the retreat with regards to training, professional development, facilitated discussion, workshop? We've done a lot of things with GSBA. We've done Clifton Strengths. We've done we had a pal of Dr. Hooker's come and do some governance stuff with us. So we've done quite a few things in the past. If you all have suggestions of what you would like to see, we can try to make it happen. Yes, Ms. Davis?
So do we have, I know we did a survey the last time we had our retreat locally, right? So I guess I'm curious to know if we are measuring our progress towards being able to apply for some of the recognition for our improvements, right? I know for a long time we suffered under that thing of cognitive, but that's gone now. And I'm curious if we have been able to overcome the scars from that and work more closely together as a board, or, how are we progressing in terms of discharging our responsibilities?
And can I answer that, Madam
Yes,
Chair?
Dr. Hooker?
Dr. Ms. Davis, we were able to win an award on last year based upon the work that we had done. This year, we are unable to do so because of the hours. Some of our members did not have the full hours necessary to apply for those awards. And that's something we can work on together to ensure that all board members are able to get their hours, whether it be in person or virtually, so that we're able to apply for the awards that are they called awards? Yes.
Like board, like governance awards?
Recognitions, board recognitions, thank you, for board recognition. So we will work with the team to ensure that we're able to do that the following year.
And that's going to be something that the board would actually be participating in as well,
Yes, and we can
okay,
check.
as opposed to being done on our behalf.
Yes, and if I'm not mistaken, that all of that information was sent to every board member from GSBA about the board recognition.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank
That
you.
sounds good. I also want to remind us that in this year, COSBA, which is the group that we joined after we left NSBA, is going to have, in February, I believe, they're going to have their national conference here in Atlanta. And so that's close enough for us to actually maybe try and attend as a whole board. And I think it's fascinating to be there with people from across the nation who are going through some of the things that are coming down the pike for us so that we can have an opportunity to collaborate with other districts. So I would like for that to be on our agenda as well.
Sorry, for clarification, Ms. Davis, you're saying you want the retreat agenda to include a discussion about going to COSPA as a group?
Yes, please.
Okay, any other suggestions?
Dr. Anderson, do you mind if we email you those suggestions as far as like topics? I think that was the question about, was it about topics at the retreat? Okay.
Yeah.
Just, okay.
Yeah, if anyone has any ideas of ways that we can strengthen as a board, then we can try to then reach out to the approved list of facilitators that can cover whatever topic that we might be interested in. So that's kind of our thinking. So yes, if anyone has any ideas, feel free to email it to Mark and myself. Okay. Let's see. The listening sessions that we discussed during last year's retreat, multiple retreats, will start this school year. Ms. Palmer will send a Google document where you can list what availability you would like for your particular listening session. If you remember, we were going to try to do one maybe per month. If people want to do it as a group of two, if their districts overlap, that might not be a bad idea. And we can maybe do once every couple of months. So on that sheet that she's going to share, if you can give her a preference for a month that you would like your listening session to take place, and also a preference for location, if it's in a school or a community center or some other facility, then Ms. Palmer can begin to schedule that. And if you would like to have it with another board member, you can also identify that on the sheet, so Ms. Palmer can make those arrangements with the two of you. If you could please keep it at 2, that would be great. We don't want to go up to 3 or more, because then we would have to post it as a public meeting rather than just posting it as an information session or a public discussion. So look out for that sheet, and please fill it out as soon as possible, because booking, spaces in schools and things like that is kind of complicated and can take some time. And then lastly, we need to start planning for Dr. Hooker's annual evaluation. If you remember, we did a mid-year evaluation at the March retreat. There is going to be a folder shared with you after tonight's meeting. Ms. Palmer's already put the folder together, and it will have a summary of the discussion from the mid-year evaluation, and it will also have a PDF copy of the tool that we will be using for the formal evaluation in October. The evaluation will take place in October per our board policy. Having said that, it's really important that everyone has their one-on-one with Dr. Hooker during September. Once all of the metrics and, previous year's data has been populated in that evaluation sheet, please make sure you have a conversation with Dr. Hooker about that information that is on that evaluation so that there are no surprises when we sit down for our evaluation at the retreat. We have an hour or two set aside as an agenda item at our retreat to go into executive session to discuss his evaluation. And so again, please have your one-on-ones with Dr. Hooker prior to our October retreat, preferably September, to give him time to do whatever data reporting or gathering that he needs to do before we sit down in October. I think that that's all that I have. Dr. Evans, do you have anything? Okay. All right. Is there anything that I did not cover that, that you all would like for me to, I don't know, think about or discuss? Yes, Dr. Yeager?
I understand you met with the chairs of the Sustainability Advisory Committee over the summer. Did you want to mention anything about that, and particularly the extension?
Oh, yeah, sure. I thought I did at the previous meeting. No? Never mind. I probably did.
I don't know. I don't remember.
Okay, so yes, I did meet with the chair and vice chair of the Sustainability Committee in mid-June. What was discussed, and I reported back to Dr. Hooker what we discussed. What was discussed was moving the date for, or the timeline for the committee and subcommittees to get their documentation together to report back to the board from January till either March or April. And the reason for this was that they could not convene any meetings during the summer months because most of the CCSD employees are 10-month employees. And so asking them to meet in June and July was not feasible. So that was not thought about when we created the initial scope of work. So we will have to go back and edit the scope of work to include that additional time extended towards the end of this period to give them those 2 months that they lost back. And hopefully maybe even give them an extra month, because it will take about a month for them to kind of get their bearings together once they do have their first meeting after a 2.5-month break. I think it's sometime next week. Are there any thoughts about that timeline? So it would go from January to March, preferably April, for that final report to be ready for the board. Yes, Dr. Gant?
Do we know how many, I know the committee is pretty large. Do we know how many people that were on the committee were 10-month employees?
Most of the CCSD employees. I can pull up, Ms. Palmer, do you mind sharing that document of the committee membership, and maybe we can have like a head count?
And I guess it's so, yeah.
There were at least 4 teachers and then probably 6 or 8 students, none of whom could participate in the summer.
The students could not? Okay.
So are there any thoughts about that extended deadline, and what, where's the board leaning on how much time, so that we can edit the scope of work? And yes, Dr. Gant?
Yeah, I would support that. I just think that, it'll give us a chance to go back and look at what we were expecting, like what the scope was, what those deliverables were. And I guess the only caution I have is being sure that that committee doesn't become like a standing committee, on and on and on, and becomes a thing a gatekeeper for the district. Like there were specific jobs and deliverables that were there. And so, and I know that this is that was beyond our control because we didn't know we wouldn't be able to meet during the summer, but that would be my only caution.
Yeah.
But I'm supportive of that.
Okay. All right, others? Okay, not seeing a whole lot of pushback. We will revise the scope of work to move that date from January for their reporting to, are we good with April, or should we say March?
I think April's fine.
Okay, so then April. What we should also keep in mind is if it's April, that's also the budget planning, like, so if there are big items that the committee is going to put before the board and the district, April might be kind of pushing it a little bit, but that's what they asked for, and so I'm just putting it out there.
There's no rule for them to get it to us early. I mean, if they complete everything.
Yeah, I think that would be my encouragement, is that the committee try to get the recommendations together as soon as possible.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so keeping in mind the budget process.
Okay. Dr. Yeager, since you go to the advisory committee meetings at this next meeting, do you mind just kind of circling back with them to make sure that they're aware that we've done the March extension? I will share that document, the revised document, with them. I just want to make sure that they also hear it. The other two issues that came up was that they are losing membership. They are bleeding members. I don't know if bleeding might be a little bit hyperbolic, but they have lost some members. And there was a little bit of a concern that the membership composition, when this is all said and done, may not look very much like the intended membership composition when this all started. So this is something we need to keep in mind. I don't know how to fix it. I don't recommend that new people continue to jump into this committee. I think it will just push this work kick the can down the road, if you will. But that is an issue that they brought up. They are not inviting new members, so whoever is going to stick around will be the official membership of this committee that reports to us in March. If you all have suggestions for how they can amend this problem, feel free to have that discussion with them or myself. And then the other question that they asked was this auditing report, the energy audit. Now, I did see that Green Street, I don't know, Cherry Street. I did see that Cherry Street did submit some sort of document that outlines the energy output of each school and the potential solar energy output that could alleviate some of the the carbon dioxide emissions. Am I saying all this right, Dr. Yeager? Okay. I don't know if that counts as what they were asking for.
That was
Okay.
just an assessment of the benefits of putting solar in some of
I
the
see.
schools, what it could potentially look like and what the costs and benefits would be. That did not include efficiency at all. It did not include any of the things we would expect from an audit. I think the chairs, specifically Erwin Green, has some ideas about how we should get an energy audit.
Yes,
So
and he did
that-
have,
Yeah, and I haven't talked to him about that, other than I know he has some very specific ideas about that process. But
Yes.
that should come as a recommendation, I think, from the committee.
and that's what I was going to follow up with. When I saw the Cherry Street, I wasn't sure if that's what he had been
No.
asking for. Okay, so then that problem still exists. He, and, Dr. Nix as well, we're asking for an RFP to get a cost estimate for doing either partial or full energy audit to at least gauge what the cost would be to have that work done while they're also doing the work of collecting and reporting to us what their recommendations are. Their justification for this, for asking for this asking for an energy audit prior to having a full report to the board, is that some of the recommendations that they may put forth would be impacted by the data that is provided to them from an energy audit. So, I don't know how else
Yeah,
to say it.
I think a lot of what the committee wants to work on is very sensitive to what the data are, like how many buses, how many gallons of gas, how many BTUs of energy do we spend, and where should we put our effort? That's fundamental, and we were not able to get a lot of that data before the summer. So an energy audit from a neutral party for the whole district would be very helpful for that process of making recommendations district-wide. But, and I know this is a long conversation, we probably need to move on, but I think there is interest in a district-wide audit from a neutral party so that we can make those recommendations based on priorities.
Okay. And so this is not a surprise to Dr. Hooker, but I think that this is a surprise to most of the other board members. I did have a conversation with them about the district having an RFP process for this, and maybe you can, Dr. Hooker, let us know what your thoughts were and continue to be.
Yes, and I think this is the discussion we can take up with the sustainability group, and our team will do whatever is necessary to make this happen, and that you will have this information to work with as you present recommendations. Okay.
Okay, so,
I have a question. So does this audit then delay the work of the sustainability group?
No.
that is not the expectation. That what they're hoping is that the audit can be done while they are collecting while they're doing their research
And how
in
long?
each of the subcommittees, and then that audit will inform their final report.
So do we have an idea of how long this audit will take, and what's the scope of it? Is it just the scope of the things that the Sustainability Committee is looking at, or is it a full district audit?
They had recommended, and I supported it, an RFP that asks for a sort of phasing and what the cost of each of these phases might be, so that the district can decide, the district along with the sustainability can decide what they're willing to pay for. So if they did a partial audit, right, what would that cost be? If they did an audit of just certain parts of the district, what would that cost be? If they did a full audit, what would that cost be? So the RFP would ask for a sort of pricing sheet, if you will, so that a decision is made based on the cost and then what each of those phases would cover.
And so this is done outside of the facilities management group, or?
This is an independent party that is hired to
do the audit, but it would.
Correct.
I'm just trying to find the connection to something that is permanent and long-term in the district.
Can I interject here? I think it may be in the best interest, as the sustainability report is being given, that the audit be included in that and it all be together so that we can see it at the same time.
I think it would be fine for them to coexist, but again, I think when you get an audit, right, of your operations, essentially, then there's somebody here that's kind of in charge of that, right? And so I would think that that would be a part of their improvement plans, or they would be the people to respond to that. Am I missing something here?
I guess I'm not,
Not that
So-
kind of audit?
so what, I think what I hear you saying is if a third party is hired to do this energy audit, would they be working specifically with our facilities maintenance division on all parts of that audit, and then would the facility maintenance division then be responsible for the recommended improvements? And I think the answer is no, because the energy audit is, the sole intention of this energy audit is to inform the Sustainability Committee's recommendations, not to necessarily inform exactly what the district is going to do moving forward. So the district may or may not be responsible for some or all aspects of that audit. at the end of the day, it would be up to the board and the district to determine how to move forward from that report. So I think the short answer, if I understand your question, is no.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Denson.
Madam Chair, and so I'm looking back over our minutes, and so on March 21st, we unanimously voted to approve the recommendation that the superintendent and district begin the process of soliciting for an energy audit. And that was at the March 21st meeting, because and so then the Sustainability Committee discussed it in April, and we thought that was already moving forward, but.
It was not moving forward because the district at that time, the district preferred that any recommendations that the Sustainability Committee made be brought forth at the end of this entire Sustainability Committee process. Then I spoke with Dr. Hooker after having a conversation with Dr. Nix and Mr. Green that the audit is actually essential to them doing their work. So while the board did have this conversation in April, a decision from the district side was not made affirmatively to move forward with an RFP. So an RFP does not exist at this time.
And I don't know whether it has to go through an RFP process. There are state agencies like the GEFA, Georgia Environmental Finance Authority, who does audits, so I don't know if it's like calling up a private group to do the audit for us. There are plenty of agencies that do this. So again, I don't know if it needs to go through the procurement RFP process or if we write a request from one of these agencies to do the work. There are many ways to do this audit that you might not be aware of. I can send you the links. But I guess it would be helpful to do it sooner than later because the data matter.
Yeah.
And the data are really important for proposal writing and justifying why this school district, I don't know why we didn't get any buses, but it could have been because we didn't have the data to show what the impact would be. Most of these proposals are very impact focused, like what is the impact of doing this investment? How much better are you going to be off? And if you don't have data in front of that, then you don't get those grants.
I understand. When I met with them, they asked for us to consider an RFP.
Okay.
They didn't say
I want
anything to
that
me about reaching out to private firms. There was no recommendation made on that. So I have done no homework at all about asking private firms. And that also seems to me to be not as transparent.
A state agency?
As doing an RFP.
Okay.
Again,
That's
I
fine.
haven't done any homework, so.
I just
Yeah.
need it.
Yeah.
I don't know the process, but it would be very important. I agree with the board chairs or the committee chairs that we kind of need to do it before next March in order to make good recommendations.
Okay. So Dr. Hooker, I assume that that's something that you are comfortable with and we can move forward with that.
Yes, I'll meet with Mr. Gilbert on tomorrow. Mr. Gilbert, put it on your calendar, and we will put something in the Friday's update. Okay?
Thank you so much. Okay, I think we can put this conversation to rest. Dr.
Sorry,
Gant.
I'm just going to restate what I stated before after the conversation because it sounds like it's a lot of moving pieces. And an RFP is a process that is very important that the Sustainability Committee hear that the expectation is that the work is complete in April, that whatever parameters are put out there in the RFP, that is held as a priority, that's communicated to people who may be applying or replying to the RFP.
Okay. Noted. Thank you so much, everybody. Whew, I know that was a very belaboring board president report, so I appreciate your patience. Okay, we will now move forward to item 4, presentations. We have our first presentation on Youth Development Initiative update.
And I will ask Mr. Chris Holtz and Mr. John Ward to come forth and Mr. Draco Thomas to come forth and make this presentation. Thank you.
always happen to the one that goes first. My name is John Ward. I'm the athletic director at Clark Central High School. With me, we have Rico Thomas, the athletic director at Cedar Shoals High School, and Chris Holtz, a teacher at Clark Middle High School and also the Youth Development Initiative coordinator. I want to make a short presentation on the Youth Development Initiative. First and foremost, I want to say thank you for your support. The genesis of this initiative was a couple of years ago. Both Coach Thomas and myself started looking at the opportunities for young ladies to play volleyball in our community that did not have cost barriers. When we started looking at other communities, a lot of opportunities were provided by their local recreational departments. And as we dug deeper, we saw there was a deficit of sports for youth in our community. Most of the communities around us, well, all of the communities around us, all of the counties that touch Clark County, they have recreational departments that offer a plethora of youth sports opportunities. Here in Clark County, we do not have a recreational department. We have a leisure services department. Hence, some of the deficits that we have in these opportunities. So we began a conversation with Athens Clark County, and basically we formed what is now the Athens Youth Development Initiative. We partnered with other agencies in our community, the University of Georgia, UGA Athletics, and some businesses, but primarily the support of the Clark County School District and Athens Clark County has made this happen. And our goal is to provide positive, structured opportunities for our youth where there are no cost barriers, and to get them the opportunities that they see the youth and surrounding communities have to compete and to play sports. Chris. As I just said, we removed the cost barriers. We offered 7 programs last year: tackle football, football cheerleading, basketball cheerleading, soccer, track and field. Only football and youth football and youth football cheerleading had a registration fee. All other programs were free for participation and free entry for the parents. This year we're adding, we also offered volleyball last year. Let me circle back on that. We also offered volleyball last year. Basketball cheerleading, and soccer was part of each school. Each of our 14 elementary schools had the opportunity to have teams involved in that 4th and 5th grade league. Youth football was divided into Jaguar Youth Football, which served the 7 elementary schools that feed into Cedar Shoals, and Gladiator Youth Football, which serves the 7 elementary schools which feed into Clark Central. And then we partnered with local clubs and agencies to offer opportunities both in volleyball and track and field. This year we're adding to our menu cross country and girls flag football. We had over 1,800 participants last year and all the activities combined. This year we're furthering our partnership with the University of Georgia with the Coaching for Success program, which we will focus on community, commitment, self-care, and discipline, in which UGA will place their students in our elementary schools to assist with this working with life skills and life development with our students. The UGA Athletic Association supports us with opportunities for their athletes to come out and interact with our students. Athens Clark County Police Department, Chief Salters has signed on this year to make this an integral part of his community outreach program. And last year we had over 100 volunteers that served as coaches, game managers, and other volunteer needs that made these events possible. Finally, what was the impact of the program? In each elementary schools, the principals, teachers, and staff all agreed that it was an increase in positive behavior and an increase in academic engagement. And parents raved about the strong community support that it built. We were having common experiences in our community. Research shows that that's the most important, one of the most important ingredients for a community to be strong is to give that community common experiences. The championship games in the elementary basketball and elementary soccer, they were both huge community events. And this data I know is not quantitative data. We're using this year as a baseline, and as we move forward in years to come, we'll be able to add more quantifiable data to our report each year. Are there any questions? Yes, ma'am.
This is amazing. What do you need from the board to support your initiative?
Excuse me. We were able to receive matching funding from the Clark County School District and Athens-Clark County last year. This is uncommon, but this year our budget is smaller. We had some initial upfront cost. This year, coming from the athletic venue, we know how to run very tight budgets and on tight programs on tight budgets. And so obviously we need the committed financial support, but just involvement. We want people, what we've tried to create is a user-friendly means by which people, resources, organizations can plug in and provide for our youth. And I know this is sports focused. We want to grow it to the arts, to other, obviously the academic component, to use this as a means by which we can propel the students' academic performance at whatever level they may be. But we want this to be something that you can come out, you can interact, you can be at the contest, you can help coach, you can mentor, you can just be there and be investing in our youth. Because these young people you see on these pictures, that's Athens 20 to 30 years from now. And as a school district, this is my 38th year as an educator. We have to invest in our youth. I've been in it long enough to I see the youth that 30 years ago are now the ones making decisions in the community. So this is not something we want to be exclusive on. We want all of Clark County to be a part of this. Yes.
So me? Oh, great. So thank you so much. I'm excited to hear this number. 1,800 is an excellent number. It's so much bigger than it was the last 2 years prior to the YDI initiative rolling out. I do know that you gave the sixth graders to CYDO, and I work with that group, Complete Transparency. I've been working with that group since they started about 3 years ago. And so I understand that the sixth grade league isn't going to be supported anymore. Is there something happening?
At the end of the season, well, the end of the school year, not the basketball season, the end of the season, we always meet with the middle school principals, middle school ADs. And in that meeting, the middle school principals and the middle school ADs requested that their sixth graders be allowed to participate on their school teams and not be part of, not that organization specifically, but any organization. A young person that's not participating on their school team can certainly participate in any other organization they want to, be it Mr. Elder's organization or the YMCA, Premier Basketball. But that decision came from the school principals.
Okay, so that just means they opened up their 7th and 8th grade to the sixth graders to participate. So I've heard from some of the sixth graders that really loved, kind of having their identity kind of unique there. And so I'm glad to hear that we won't be discouraging other leagues from continuing, because I don't think that we can absorb the 180 kids that were in the sixth grade league into the 7th and 8th grade.
Exactly. And we're adding, just we also did some things with the middle school athletics last year, and we allowed sixth graders to begin participating in cross country and track and volleyball. And so they had done that already, and now the sixth graders will be allowed to participate in basketball, and each middle school will have an A team and a B team.
Okay.
It won't be the sixth graders coming out just to try to make the one team, so there will be an A team and a B team, boys and girls at each of our 4 middle schools.
That sounds
Wonderful.
good. Sounds like you guys are going back to what it was like when I was in school. That was a long time ago. Okay, thank you. It was a long time.
Ms. Butts?
I have two questions. So my first question is, with the football, the registration, where is that money going towards when they paying that registration fee?
That goes to the school, each school, since it's being a registration, and it's Cedar Shoals for Jaguar football, Clark Central for Gladiator Youth football, and then the league that they're participating in is the North Georgia Youth Football Association. Is all the area schools from Raven County all the way down through Hall County, Oconee County, Elbert, Stevens, all of that. And so there is a fee that you have to play in that league. Mm-hmm. And so the two main expenses, and it takes all that plus more, would be to pay the registration fee to the league, mm-hmm. and then the officials. Okay. So that money goes into the school, and it's used to pay those two invoices.
And do you all know if this year the schedule will be better for the parents? Because I know last year, like, if they had a child that was in 5th grade, but then they had a child that was in 1st grade, they was probably playing in Hall County, and then the others playing in Clark County. Is that going to kind of be the same this year as well?
The league makes the schedule, not to pass blame, but the league does make the schedule. We're hopeful, in other agencies, whether they were, Gainesville City, Raven County, Elbert County, experienced the same. It's putting a big puzzle together.
And Dr. Evans?
Hey, guys.
Hello.
So in full transparency, my son Jack is one of the GLADs.
Yes.
That's over there in Bishop Park right now.
Yes.
Hating the hills. He
Yes.
hates the hills.
Yes.
I love him because it's great. 'Cause he's tired when he comes home, which is good. So is this the same presentation that you guys gave to the commissioners, just out of curiosity?
Very similar. Chris Holtz made that presentation.
Yeah, I saw it, Chris. And I thought you did a great job. One of the things that I would like to, it seemed like the commissioners were looking for some like magic number of students that are going to be helped by this program. So I'm going to give you that number, okay? You can use this number. It's 1, okay? If it helps one kid, it's worth whatever amount of money it is. I mean, it seemed like we got caught up in the idea of adult problems when we're talking about children. And, the fact that we have less money this year kind of seems a little odd to me, especially since we know how successful it was. And so maybe that's something that we as a board and with the leadership team, we could have a discussion about. But yeah, the magic number is 1, okay?
And those of us who've been in education long enough, we know the starfish story, and it's the one starfish that goes back into the ocean. It makes all the difference for that one. You're exactly right.
All right, Dr. Gant, I think you had your...
Yes, thank you, Dr. Ward and colleagues for the presentation. I just made a couple of notes. One is with the other program, I'm not as familiar with how the programs merged, and similar to Dr. Evans, I'm a parent of an athlete, or a budding athlete, I should say. But it does seem like at some point there may have been a breakdown between the schools and the external partners that were working with, I think it was the basketball league, and I don't know Mr. Ernest's, the name, I can't remember, is leaving me. But I guess one of the things I wanted to put just on our radar is like just figuring out how, we can really strengthen that communication. Although it's no longer, that program will no longer necessarily be funded, is what I'm hearing you say, but I think like strengthening the communication between our partners that want to help with sporting activities is important. And I think that starts at building leadership. I know you mentioned that decision was made by principals. I attended just about all of those games. And those were opportunities in my mind for principals to be there and then to be able to, build those relationships with the community and maybe even have those conversations and figure out improvements. So I do think communication, maybe figuring out how we can strengthen that. And then you mentioned this, Coach Ward, about starting this year with baseline. I do think it could be useful to have some quantitative, just very brief, information. And however the board, we can't do operations, but in our other lives, however, whatever we can do to support that, because I know that you're still working on a very tight budget for a lot of kids. And then lastly, I just wanted to say again, very appreciative of all of the programs that offer the opportunity for kids to be active. I love that this is expanding. I want to continue to see it expand, and I really love the idea that we're thinking about the arts and how do we go beyond sports. So, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Denson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, gentlemen, thank you for this presentation, but also just for doing this work. I was able to go to a few of the soccer matches outside of Whitehead Road Elementary, and it was almost like a festival kind of atmosphere there. While I was out there, able to talk to other parents, it was really kind of just bringing those communities together. So that's like an extra on top of this, aspect that I think we're getting rewards from. On this, and I am definitely appreciative of ACC Gov for matching the funding and having this happen, but I think this did show that there was, I think, some communication breakdowns, and definitely some, I think, misinformation had been kind of brewed out, and I think this got just caught up in it a little bit. And Madam Chair, I guess I would ask you maybe just to consider us starting back up our each semester meetings with the commissioners like used to happen. They've chosen not to do that. I actually heard from a number of commissioners and the mayor, and there was definitely some interest in doing it, which I reached out, because some of them reached out to me about this. And so I'm just saying, I want us to find a positive way to move forward, to fix this, remedy this doesn't happen again, which I think will behoove us and our students in the community and them also. So I'm happy to volunteer to try to get that, because I know once we had when former member Greg Davis was part of the political committee, he was kind of like doing that, and I'm happy to try to get those going again if that could be help or somebody else, but I just think that would really be helpful to all parties involved.
Mr. Denson, I'm going to try to say this in a nice way, but you're the only person who knows that the commission is interested in reconvening these meetings. Why is that? I have heard from no one. Ms. Palmer? Dr. Hooker? So who are these commissioners that have said that they want to reconvene these meetings? And if they do,
I don't want us to start anything. I'm actually trying to make this where we have a better atmosphere moving forward, because I agree that things were said on there that I think were very incorrect. And so I want that to not happen again. And I think that communication between the two bodies is probably the best way to make sure that doesn't happen. And I do know, and I appreciate Dr. Hooker's, I heard that Dr. Hooker did reach out to some of the commissioners too after that, and I very much appreciate that, and I think that helped smooth over, because I think that communication, that this vote was very much at risk. I think any of us that watched the meeting realized that it was very much at risk of not passing, and I appreciate Dr. Hooker doing some of that advocacy, and others and parents, which I know reached out to a bunch of us and to commissioners to make sure that this passed, but it was at risk of not, and I just want to make sure that that situation is, we do as much as we can. I can't speak for them, but we do as much as we can to make sure that that doesn't happen again.
I'll address one thing I can share with you. I came into the loop after someone shared a Facebook post with me concerning this matter, and I picked up the phone and called a commissioner and cleared the air, and I assume this individual spoke to other council members, and I received other texts and saying, thank you for sharing this information with me. I can say a number of them have my telephone number, and I saw them yesterday at the chamber luncheon, went around and thanked all of them for supporting our initiative. But I did say, any questions you have about CCSD, you know how to contact me. I don't mind having that conversation, but as Dr. Anderson said, I have not heard of a commissioner or anyone saying we need to continue with our quarterly meetings. I don't recall, when was the last time we had quarterly meetings? Can anybody tell me? Okay. All right.
And that was for
For
the Youth
youth
Initiative retreat.
Okay. Can we go to the next thing we have?
If I could, just one more thing. Okay, so we're excited. The middle school sixth graders have uniforms, and so that means that that league can go forward. There's no expense involved beyond that. So one thing that Ernest Elders has said to me 1,000 times is that we do not charge anything, and so that has been exciting as well. But I want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to do that sixth grade league last year. I think it was exciting. I got to work concessions. Had never done that, didn't even do it for my own kids, but okay. Every Sunday, that was my work, and it was good work. I got a chance to spend time with the kids as well as parents and the supporters from this community that truly, truly believe in this. And so that great support from the sheriff's office for sure, and several other businesses that really do see the value in engaging at this level. So I'm excited that you're expanding this program. That is delightful to me. It goes back to the very first conversations we had several years ago. Where can it go? And so I actually feel good that we kind of dreamed, we sent the vibes out to you guys to pick this up and make it happen. So thanks a million. Oh, I'm sorry. The other thing I wanted to talk about is gym time. Okay, we need practice time, so I'm going to leave us with that thought. How do we share the gyms?
We need facilities in Clark County, lots of them.
Thank you so much for your presentation. And I will reiterate what several members of the board have said. You mentioned that there have been some cuts from last year's budget to this year's budget. I know Mr. Greiner does not want to hear me say this, but if there are some needs that the board could help support, moving this initiative and keeping it strong, moving it forward year after year, I'm sure that the board would support
And
that.
let me just make sure we're clear. There hasn't been cuts. It's just our budget was smaller. We're doing more with less money this year because there were some upfront costs last year that we're not going to incur. You all have been great, the Clark County School District. And so, but now that you've opened your door, you shouldn't do that to athletic director.
Thank you for the presentation, Mr. Ward.
It's on record.
And I do want to share with you each time that I have my one-on-one meeting with Mr. Greiner, that is part of the topic as to how to sustain it, and we're working to make that happen. So thank you. All right.
Thank you so much. All right, yeah. We have item 4B up next, the school bus project.
And I'm going to ask Mr. Jim Gurley to come forth and do this presentation.
I got it now. School Bus Project 2018. CCSD started looking at non-diesel buses in 2018. That's why we call the project 2018. In 2020, transportation started purchasing propane buses. We purchased it with bond money, SPLOST, general fund. We had alternative fuel funds and grant funds. Transportation has a total of 153 buses. 33 of those are in propane buses. We have plans to purchase a small number of gas buses for long-range travel because diesel buses are being phased out. So we need to have that range. This will cover trips that are going out of town to places like Albany or Perry or Savannah. Some background, more background. The fleet traveled 1.9 million miles during the 23-24 school year. The fleet averaged around 70 miles a day last year. We got around 20 buses that are going over 100 miles a day. We have many trips that require round trips of 130 miles or more. In 23-24, we had 281 trips in that year. Now, when I say a trip, that doesn't mean it was one bus. In some cases, there were up to four buses that went on that trip. Transportation does not like the buses to fall under 25% on the fuel level. We have the ability with our GPS to monitor remotely a number of the newer buses, their fuel level through the computer on the systems. Working with the IRS for propane tax credits, and the IRS actually came to visit us and look at our fleet. And the funny thing was, he said, I don't want to see your diesel buses, I just want to see the green buses and the propane buses. Transportation had a 3% down rate on buses last year. EPA Clean School Bus and Heavy Duty Grant Programs. Round one was one that we put in for. This was with our vendor. We had 10 propane buses that we requested, and we got an award of $300,000. In round two, we were not awarded funds. This was a competitive grant, and we did ask for 2 electric buses, and it isn't on here, but we also asked for 13 propane buses. In round three, we did not apply pending recommendation of the Sustainability Committee. And in round 4, the EPA wanted applications that requested up to 10 electric buses. And we did not apply pending recommendation of the Sustainability Committee. Now, the word is that there is a round 5 coming. We don't know what it'll be. We don't know really the form it'll take. The grant writer for one of the vendors told me that it probably will be like round 1 if they're closing it out. They'll try to provide money to everybody. But it could end up like round 2. Electric bus advantages. So you can remove your old fuel tanks. You don't have any fossil fuels, no emissions, cleaner buses without a liquid fuel. It's healthier for students and drivers. Electric motors are reduced cost. Motors are reliable. Grid modernization in our area. The drivers like the quiet buses, and local air quality improvement. Some disadvantages. The upfront cost, it can be anywhere from $320,000 to $500,000. Funding for the first 10, but what about the other 40? And the question is, okay, you may fund us for 10. What about the rest of the fleet? Battery replacement cost over $50,000 to $100,000 within a 12-year life cycle. And so what we've been told is that in a 12-year life cycle, you would probably expect to make 1 change out of the batteries in the buses. Charging infrastructure cost over $220,000 for 1 charger based on Georgia Power single cost charger. That single charger does have 2 connections that will allow you to charge 2 buses. High voltage systems on buses cause it to require a contractor to conduct repairs. These electric buses are high voltage systems, and you just can't have anyone working on them. In winter, it is recommended to have auxiliary heat. Now, this is probably more of an issue up north, but what I was told is that normally they put in diesel heaters. More disadvantages. Electric buses have an estimated 80 to 120 mile range. Now, I've been told by those working on this that they're trying to get to 300. They see 300 as the magic number, but right now we don't know of any. Propane has a range of 300 to 340 miles. A gas bus has a range of 650 miles. Transportation may have to add routes and drivers because of the short range of electric buses. Dispatch will have to monitor routes much more closely because of the short range. New battery technology is unknown. There is new technology working on batteries that are, I guess you would say, safer. They're longer range. But there's a lot of different options, and right now we don't know where that'll go. Takes an average of 4 hours for batteries to charge with a fast charger, 8 to 9 with a regular charger. One thing I want to add on this is that my understanding is it's very important that you match the charger with the batteries, because you could have a fast charger, but the battery in the bus can't handle it, and therefore it won't charge at the high rate. So there's a lot you have to get correct with your vendor when you get, if you get a charger in a bus, and make sure those batteries can handle the fast charger. Internal battery temperature issues with buses. This is another concern with the electric buses, but they do have on-board systems that monitor the batteries when they're charging, and they will alert or shut down. Shortage of copper mines. The University of Michigan did an analysis and found that they need to be more copper mines. Battery disposal, environmental impact. This is really unknown. It's been talked about. There's not a lot of information on that. Power to charge electric buses in Athens will come from natural gas plants and hydro plants located in North Georgia, based on information from Georgia Power. Concerns with school districts that struggle to get them fully operational with high down rates. This is a big one because we have down rates around 3% right now. So if you have a down rate that goes to 10, 15, 20, whatever percent, that would be a real concern for trying to manage the fleet and serve the public. Fire departments in New York City and San Francisco reported handling more than 660 fires involving lithium-ion batteries since 2019. Now, I did talk to the fire department here. They do have a plan how to deal with electric vehicles. They haven't had any EV fires that they could tell me about. But there is the situation of thermal runaway, and the response would be to let it burn out. And that's a question mark because I asked a consultant, and she kind of grudgingly said, yeah, that's probably what you do if it gets to thermal runaway. On average, a 72-passenger diesel bus weighs 24,300 pounds. Electric bus weighs 36,000 pounds. CCSD buses weigh around 19 or a little more, so we're a little less than the average. This could create a stress on roadways or bridges, especially as you go in some outlying areas. It is something you have to consider. Advantages to propane. Propane engines are 90% cleaner than mandated EPA standard, which is why the EPA still recommends it. If you go on the EPA site, you'll see they're still recommending propane as an alternative option versus diesel. Both the EPA and the U.S. Department of Energy recommend propane as an alternative fuel. Propane is domestically produced and well established. Propane engine technology is improving, which has helped control the cost. And we've actually seen the cost of the buses come down that were propane buses. Propane is located in the U.S. and is abundant. Some disadvantages for propane. Propane burns less efficiently per gallon than diesel. I think it's about half. Propane emissions results in vehicles that are not as clean as an electric bus. Propane can be less efficient when idling. Propane has a shorter range than both diesel and gasoline. That's why we're wanting to get some gas buses. Propane filling stations can be difficult to find. Normally what we do is they fuel here and they go wherever they go and they come back. Bus purchases next 5 years. So what I tried to do was break out the cost because this was obviously the sticker shock that affected everyone as they were looking at this. So it's from 2025 to 2030. In the blue is an electric bus, 10 of them. In green is the chargers that would be needed. So you're looking at a little over 4.7 million. The red is the propane, which would be a little over 1.5 million. That's what we would be looking at. But these costs wouldn't stay this way. They might come down, they might go up, we don't know. But this was one of the things that kind of made us pause with electric buses, was this cost, because it will require a different funding model. I think that's it. Any questions?
Thank you so much for that presentation. Very insightful. All right, let's open up the floor. Dr. Yeager?
So I find that thank you for the presentation and thanks for putting it together. I appreciate it. I do find that your listing of the disadvantages of electric buses is a whole lot of pearl clutching, as we like to say, and not a lot of data. I would really like to see the data about some of these things that you're throwing up as disadvantages, and I would also like to see many more pages of the advantages of electrical school buses. You listed them and ran through them very quickly, and there's a whole lot of data that goes with those as well, specifically asthma rates, which are produced from air pollution, which is produced by our propane buses as well as our diesel and gas buses. Asthma rates are the #1 reason why kids don't go to school, because they stay home with difficulty breathing. And there's no data about that in your presentation. So I feel a little bit like you had a decision already before you prepared this presentation, and I'm quite discouraged by that. I would really like to see a more objective approach. And I say that with all due respect, I really do. I was just really struck that there's only one page of advantages and lots of pages of disadvantages that are not well supported for our district. Thank you.
Yeah, well, the approach we took with this was to look at it from the decisions beginning in 2018, how we evaluate it. As far as going deep into data like CO2 levels, they have a lot of things on the EPA site about weight and how much it's emitted. We stayed away from that because really we probably would want an analysis to be done of that so someone who's unbiased can do it, because we were looking at it more from the practicality of the range of the buses, the cost, and the ability to get these buses in and reach a 3% down rate. Those were kind of the effects. We were kind of looking at it from that standpoint. But there is a lot of data out there that could be used to go further. You could take data and say, how much fuel are you going to use in say a 12-year cycle for a propane bus, and how much will it cost to charge the electric bus over 12 years? There's things like that you could do.
Can I follow up with one comment I forgot to mention? I would like specifically data that would be helpful is you talk a lot about the range of buses needed and that electric buses would have a shorter range. What are the length of if we added up all the different routes in our district, what sort of range do we need for the day-to-day? I understand that for field trips and trips, absolutely we're going to need something different until the grid is available, but for the day-to-day, are we within the parameters of electric buses for most of our routes?
If you simply stick to routing, don't do midday, don't do field trips, don't do after school, you're probably looking more in the 30-mile range. But it would always depend upon if it's a high school route, a middle school route, or elementary. Elementary would be short, but a high school route would be much larger.
So it doesn't sound like that would be an issue at all for an electric bus that was charged overnight. They could do that.
If it was charged overnight, and that's why I talked about how they would have to manage the routes. That would be the part of managing it.
Yeah, but it's definitely within feasibility.
Yes, it is.
And that wasn't mentioned in your presentation. Thank you.
Can I ask a quick follow-up before we move on to the next board member? So the 30-mile range on average for the local transportation outside of field trips, how many buses approximately is that of the 140,
Well,
I
know
think,
that
in your fleet?
there's about 120 some odd for routes last year. 20 of them would be over 100 for everything they were doing. But then you would probably, when you averaged out everything, it was 70 miles. I don't know how many would do the 30 or 40. That way I would have to do something like to dig deeper and just pull every route out and just count them.
Yeah, I guess the point, and I think it's the same that Dr. Yeager is making, is you're not necessarily talking about replacing all 140 buses. There could be a conversation where there's the replacement of the ones that do less mileage per day, which, would still make an impact, I think is where she was going. Other members, questions? Yes, Dr. Gant?
I was just going to make a note, or wanted to make a note that, well, first, thank you, because I know that I do, not familiar with this part, but I know that you all deal really in operations and trying to figure out how we can get people where they need to be, basically the more immediate needs at that time. And so I am appreciative that you put this together. And based on the resources we have right now, transportation is not well supported by the state, and that's a reality. And the reality is that we have to get a lot of students different places in difficult circumstances. It just made me wonder if there might be an opportunity, and Dr. Hooker, I don't know if this is probably more than your purview, not necessarily immediately, but if there may be an opportunity for some collaborative work between ACC Gov, who I think they have electric buses, and the school district, even if it's, on a pilot, to see, because they've experienced this, they have the buses, they have the drivers. My guess is that they would have the experience and know what the implications are as it relates to like maintenance costs, battery replacement, and all of those different things. And I'm just wondering if that might be a compromise, along with, maybe even our own piloting of 1 to 2 buses. But it seems like there may be some middle ground, and points of collaboration that may be able to at least help us make, some small steps forward.
And thank you for saying that. I've sat in on the sustainability meeting, and we've had University of Georgia people, ACC personnel who say they're willing to work with us. And I agree with you. We want to start small. I think Mr. Swift and his team, or Mr. Swift and Dr. Askew, had an opportunity to go visit Atlanta Public, who just received 7 buses, I believe, and get some intel from them. So we're working toward that and looking forward to as I spoke with Dr. Yeager today, about upcoming grants that may be available to do so. So we're working to make that happen. And I want to applaud Mr. Gurley again for putting this presentation today based on the information that he had received, and he's reached out to other EV vendors to get information to make sure we're giving accurate information. I wanted to be heard from me, you guys to hear from me. We are looking to purchase EV buses, but it takes time. It takes money, it takes grant writing, as we've been discussing in our sustainability group. And as I did my research, and I've been told, and I think I shared an article with a few people, in that Vice President Harris has had $58 billion out there for the past 3 years in producing electric buses. They've only produced 60 in the past 3 years. And so we're talking to other districts. We're going to apply with the next 5th round. We will work with grant writers, whoever that can help us do that. And we want to do what's right for Clark County. We're not kicking to the curb and say we're never buying any of those. No, we will.
May I add something real quick?
Sure.
The round 2, when we put in for the 2 electric buses, the plan was that was to be our test. And that's what we were hoping for. And so when that didn't go through, we didn't get them. But the plan was round 2 to get 2 buses to test them.
And can I say also, in awarding these buses, it was based upon rural areas, urban areas, and other things. You had to meet certain criteria in order to get those, and some of those we didn't meet.
Well, the EPA didn't really say why we didn't get it, but yeah, there are a lot of different criteria. We have SPLOST, we're a smaller county, we got money in round 1. There are probably a lot of factors that played in, but they don't give us feedback why.
Okay, yes, Ms. Hall.
I know it's still early in the school year, but are we still suffering from a shortage of bus drivers? What does that
Let's
look
see.
like?
Right now, the last number I have is that we were 14 short, and that was about a week ago.
So with the disadvantage of possibly having to add more drivers and we're at a shortage, what would that look like? Or can you guess maybe how many additional drivers we would need that would increase the shortage that we have?
Well, if we had to add drivers for, say, we were going to have EV buses that are shorter, and we have to maybe have a bus have an AM, an EV bus in the AM, and an EV bus in the PM, that would depend on the routes. You'd have to break the routes by detail. Probably high school would definitely have to be considered. I don't know I couldn't say much more beyond that.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Are there other questions before we move on? Yes, Mr. Denson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, and thank you, sir, for giving us this information. I do wonder if you could, do we have the information on the propane vehicles also require propane fueling tanks, correctly, that we
Right.
have to purchase?
Yeah.
So do we know what the cost is of those buying because we have the cost of the electric chargers, but what the cost of buying the propane fueling tanks is?
Well, the fueling tanks are a part of a lease we get, and the amount, I believe, per gallon was 25 cents on the gallon, I believe we pay for every gallon to lease the tanks and the system there. We chose to do that because when we first got them, we didn't want to spend $150,000 on a whole propane fueling system, and maybe propane didn't work.
Sure.
And so that's kind of the cautious approach we took. So what we did was we leased it, and we have leased tanks. Now, in the future, we might change that, but right now, they're leased.
Okay, yeah, and I know that in the Sustainability Committee, we got information from a presentation that Georgia Power gave CCSD a few years ago, in which the same option was given for the electric chargers, in which they could have been leased to us in the same kind of way. Isn't that correct?
Yes, that's correct. You actually, if you go deeper into the funding, depending on the vendor, they may give you leasing options for the buses, for the chargers. That's a whole part of this funding that's a different part, that's different than what I talked about. That depends on who you get with. And it just may be that you can find a vendor in an RFP that would say, give you 2 free buses and the rest of them you pay for, or give you 5 free chargers, something like that. That is a possibility, and that has been talked about by some of the consultants.
Yeah, because I know, when Cherry Street came to the Sustainability Committee, they also talked about that along with the solar leasing, they also have the option to give us electric bus system leasing, and which we can actually borrow from the savings to pay for it. And yeah, so I definitely think there's a lot of those options, and I'm glad to hear that we are looking into this. But I will say, I definitely get concerned looking at, this presentation and seeing, up through 2030, kind of the idea of still buying, propane buses with a 20-year lifespan, putting us up in the 2050 of us still using a fossil fuel system that actually creates more carbon than diesel does. So, I share some pretty grave concerns. And at some point, if we're ever going to do this, at some point we have to move forward. And I'm definitely concerned with us continuing to purchase those propane buses this year and subsequent years.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I want to remind the members that we have until 7 o'clock to do the rest of our agenda items. So we will move forward. And if you all want to continue having this conversation at the regular meeting, we can decide to add it to the agenda for the regular meeting. And we can do that with any work session item as a reminder. Okay, moving down to facilities updates.
It's not the same document. The PDF is not the same document. If I email it to you, but it's still going to be Word.
Could we maybe move to item B?
Yes, while you
Let's table item A and let the documents, let you all work the documents out. And let's move to item B, the SPLOST monthly report.
Good evening. Lisa, you got the PDF. I was going to do an update in pictures real quick, but I'll be brief. Clark Middle, we're in. Cedar Shoals, we're in. Biomanufacturing, we're in. The projectors, marker boards, 15 schools is done. I think we got one room left to touch up the paint in. Health clinics, we're doing finishing work in the Classic City clinic, and it should be ready in the next 2 weeks. Coyle, we just poured the footings for the modular units, and they're coming next week. That's it. Brief talk. Any questions?
Clark Middle School is beautiful. It's a beautiful facility.
There was a lot of people put a lot of effort into that to get it ready. And so I thank the contractor and the architect and the staff for being very patient and moving in and getting set up. So we appreciate that.
All right, do we have any questions, Dr. Gant?
Yes, and thank you. And I know we talked briefly about this when I was there. Any updates regarding the elevator?
Elevator company's coming out tomorrow.
Okay.
So we're touching up some things there and hopefully get the state inspector back and get that turned over. But transportation has jumped through hoops to make accommodations for our adaptive ed students and supporting them.
Yes, yeah.
So the inspection will be tomorrow and it'll be up and running?
The inspection with the elevator company, the state inspector, that's another hoop we got to jump through.
Okay, and it's not usable until the state inspector approves it, right?
Correct.
So that's still the end of the month?
Right now, it's the 28th.
The
But
28th?
we're trying to improve that date.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, I know it was, yes, so thank you to transportation as well, and thank you for coordinating that for our students that may have mobility challenges. And I was thinking about the janitorial staff, because I know that they're lugging stuff, and I don't know how much or what we can do about it, but that is just something, I don't know if anybody who's watching this has any connections
in
where
high
they can
places.
get the inspection done quickly, but that is a huge building for our janitorial staff, and it is a huge coordinating effort on your part in transportation to get our students where they need to be efficiently and without, too much hassle. So that would be great if somebody in the atmosphere is watching that can help us out there.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? Okay. And I did see through some emails that there's going to be like a punch list for teachers who are having some needs that need to be addressed that y'all.
Yeah, we have a Google Doc
Yeah.
we're keeping track of, and they're putting it on there, and we address it as we get it to us.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, thank you so much. Are we ready to move back to item A? Ms. Palmer? Okay. All right. We still have the Word document. I'm able to download it. Is everybody good? Y'all have your copies? Okay. All right.
Okay, good evening, and I did email it to everyone, so you've got it in your emails as well. The document that appears on the screen just kind of details the outages that we've been managing and working through over the past week. I won't hit every line item. I'll just hit the high points, and then certainly, I'm sure you guys have some questions, so we'll be ready to answer those. I'll note Barnett Shoals, you can see, I think most of those rooms have been repaired. There may just be one that's outstanding. Barrow Elementary, we were able to get those repaired. Clark Central, which is also up for the renovation. If you note there in the notes, same. Those units are running. We just can't see them because of the control issue. And I'll talk more about that later. Gaines Elementary, the gym has actually been repaired, so that's been updated even since I created this document. It's done. And then the cafeteria is halfway up, and so we're continuing the repairs on that. And when I say halfway, units are, not all units, but some units are in stages, so half of that unit is functional. If we look at Timothy Elementary, you can see the repairs that have been done there. The majority of those rooms are back running. And then at the bottom, Winterville, there's an update, 515 has been repaired. Any of the others that say same, those are up for service or continuing service into next week. One of the things that's kind of slowed us down just a little bit, some of the providers that we use, the contractors here locally, some of the nearby systems, imagine that, are experiencing some of the same problems that we are. And so they've had to deploy personnel to other places to assist those systems. So we don't have quite all of the resources right here in Athens that we need in terms of getting everything fixed. But we are working diligently. I can tell you Mark and his guys, they're working overtime, they're working evenings, they're working weekends. We're trying to get things repaired as quickly as possible. So with that said, if there's any questions, we're here to answer them.
Thank you. Ms. Hull?
I'll be brief. I'll just throw them out there so you can answer them one at a time. With the gym update, or when, I would like to know when that was fixed. It's my understanding from Gaines as recently as today that the kindergarten pre-K wing was entirely out of air. So not just the gym and the cafeteria. And also, I know you're reporting on the HVAC, but while I have your attention, the plumbing was bubbling on that hall to the point of making several restrooms on one side of the building inoperable. So just looking for an update because that is creating a safety issue for our kids. And so just looking to see when we can or how we can support getting that done.
So I know for a fact the plumbing was repaired this morning at 11:06. If that pre-K wing is out, that's news to me. Sam, have you heard that? So that would be news to me. It hasn't been reported, it hasn't come in a work order either, but we'll certainly investigate it. The other thing too I'd like to remind you guys of, without going down a long rabbit hole. So the situation with the HVAC is dynamic. And the reason it's dynamic is because in many places, and Gaines is one of the schools, and let me say this too, the improvements that we're making, you haven't seen them yet. Because like Gaines is up for renovation, John has ordered the units. Of course, we had to go through the design phase, then we gotta go through the RFP. The machines aren't here yet. But once the machines get here, then we won't have to talk about Gaines anymore. It just hadn't happened yet, but it's coming and it's coming soon. We'll have those improvements in place by Christmas time for all 5 of the schools that are being renovated. So I can tell you, I share your concerns and frustrations you may have. Believe me, nobody in this room is more frustrated than I am, because I want them to work. But right now, I don't have all of the resources and materials. They're on the way to get everything to work, but we're on our way there.
And I do appreciate it. I'll just say thank you. And I did see that there was a contractor for HVAC out there at Gaines as late as 5 o'clock, which is why I was late to the board meeting. So I do know that they are working after hours. Thank you for that.
All right, are there other questions, comments? Okay. Dr. Yeager, and let us be mindful of our time here.
I just need a clarification. When it says same, what does that mean? It means that it's been fixed or not been fixed?
Okay, so if it says same, for example, like RTU2, which is rooftop unit number 2 at the Boys and Girls Club. So same means it's still in for service. So one of our contractors, or we have it ourselves, we just haven't gotten to it yet, but the week's not out. And again, we're working evenings, we're working nights, we're working weekends. So it's up for service.
Okay.
Thank you.
And can I share with you, I had an opportunity to ride with Mr. Bailey on Tuesday, I believe. And what I do want to applaud his team for, and him especially, is going to those individual classrooms, having conversations with the teachers, finding out the problems and telling them, we'll work on this, we'll get back in touch with you. So I think it's the human touch of not just sitting at the computer, but being in those buildings and having the conversations with the teachers and giving them timelines as to how and when we can resolve those problems. Not just saying it's in the work, your answers in the workflow as to what has been done, but talking to them individually, and he and his team are working to make that happen. So thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. And there was some fan conversations that were had through emails, and we just kind of want to make sure that we know that the leadership has access to fans to give out, but there might be some breakdown in communications with the teachers. So just to throw that out there.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things I did actually today, and I put it in the e-update for this week and for next week. And like you said, there are already fans in the building, so principals have them and they know they can request them. But we are going to implement a process that's a little more automated. So we're just going to deliver fans when a room goes out. Now, the thing we're asking principals in the e-update is we need you to help us help you by managing any fans that get delivered to your school. Because as rooms get repaired, okay, now you've got an extra fan. Keep that. That's your inventory. We don't want it back because if something else goes out, now you've got a fan you can move to a room. You don't have to wait for us to get the guy out there to deliver it to you. Mm-hmm. So we put that process in place. It's in the e-update. We got plenty of fans. We got fans on order. And I'm hoping we get to a point, and I stated this to them too in the e-update, where we get to a point we don't need fans.
Right.
Because all the AC is working.
Yeah.
And we're working diligently toward it. And like I said, you just haven't seen it yet because the machines aren't here. But they're coming, and you're going to start to see changes once we get this stuff in place over fall break, over Thanksgiving break, over Christmas break, and then going into the spring. Because there's even more work we got to do with controls and other machines. But we're working on it.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, I think we're ready to move on. All right. Let's now move to item 6, and this is the business items for discussion for consent agenda. So just to kind of try to move efficiently through this, I will call it out, and if you want it pulled, just say as loudly as you can, pull, and Ms. Palmer would note it. All right. A, June 12th, 2024 work session and board meeting minutes. We're good. B, Department of Ed assistance in developing local facilities plan through FY29.
Pull.
Right. Got that, Ms. Palmer? C, purchase of 2 vans with ESSER funds. All right. D, school bus purchase for the 2024-25 school year.
Pull, please.
All right, pull. So we've got B and D. Transportation push to talk system for school buses.
Pull.
Okay, pull. BDE. Approve biomanufacturing equipment purchase. All right. Foothills FY25 collaborative operating agreement. All right, we're good. And approval for the FY25 federal formula allocations, ESSA, IDEA, and Fed and State CTAE.
Really quick, I have questions about Foothills, but I will ask them in the regular meeting, and I don't want it pulled, but I wanted to note that for the record.
Okay. Dr. Evans, keep me on so that, yeah. And then field trips. Okay, so we've pulled items B, D, and E. Are there questions that the school district can be kind of thinking through that you have about these items prior to the work session?
Which one did I
Prior
ask
to the
for?
board meeting?
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. Comments or questions? So we're just pulling them to vote on them separately. We don't have, yes.
With Foothills, I was just curious, like, if we can have just a brief update. If we're not able to get it during the board meeting, I think a board report would be fine. But, like, what is our utilization? How many spaces do we have? Things like that. Like, an impression of what it is. I read what they're providing and the definitions, but I want to know how this is being used by our students, the number of students that are there.
And yes, we can provide that information for you. I think you provided in an update to our principals or something, so we'll have that to you before our meeting. Okay, thank you.
Okay, yes, Ms. Davis.
So I asked for item B, the DOE assistance in developing local facilities plan through fiscal year 2029.
Yes.
I need to know, where can I see the current one?
Mr. Gilbert, Ms. Davis is asking where can she see the current local plan for building? And if I'm not mistaken, we voted on this a year ago.
You voted
4 years,
4 years
ago.
ago.
Yeah, it was.
Oh, gee, I wish
Yeah.
I remembered that.
It was over in the annex. All those big
I remember
giant.
voting on it, but I'd love to know where I can see it to see what we're talking about here.
Yeah, it's the same thing we do every 5 years. They just help us fill out the forms on their DOE website. They have a consultant that helps us put all the information in.
Can you find that on the website and we get a copy for Ms. Davis so she can actually see it? How many pages are we talking about?
It's like 160.
All right, can we get a link to that and send it to her?
Yeah, I'll see if I can do it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, would you still like that item pulled, Ms. Davis, or you just
I
wanted
can't
the?
vote for it until I know what I'm looking at. I'm sorry, this doesn't tell me anything.
Okay, all right, we'll keep it pulled. Other questions for the pulled items? All right, so the Foothills will stay on the consent agenda, Dr. Gant, and item B and D will continue to be pulled. All right. B,
Yeah, the
D,
transportation push-to-talk system,
B, D, and E.
right.
Okay, will continue to be pulled, okay? Item 7, personnel report. Am I supposed to? We're just going to vote on that one. Okay, that's just going to be an executive session,
Yeah.
right?
Is it
Okay.
on
We're not
consent?
having an
I don't think
executive
it's on consent.
session.
Oh, we're not. Oh,
That's not on
okay.
consent, that's a separate vote, is it not?
Correct. They asked that this be separate, voted on
Yes.
separately, so that's why it wasn't included in the
Exactly.
items above.
Right.
Is that for the document
It's-
that you shared with us?
The one you have is an addendum. It's not on this, and it will go on the board meeting as well underneath personnel for a individual vote.
Okay, okay. So then let's move to the job description, item B, under 7. The CTAE Director job description. There are questions?
Who's over CTAE now? Am I confusing positions?
No, let me share with you, Mr. Tomas Ramirez had 2 jobs when I first came here. He was in charge of CTA as well as world language. We broke those apart, so he's currently just in charge of CTAE. That's why we put the job description strictly for CTAE. That's why it was.
Okay, and
placed on.
world language, will that be another job description at some
Yes,
point?
yes.
Okay.
Okay.
No, there's already been a world language job description approved. It was approved when we hired Mr. Reinscheld last year. We just never updated the CTAE job description, and it needed to be updated for our 5-year review.
Okay. I don't recall that at all. That is not in any part of my memory. Okay, so barring any other questions,
Do we have an executive session today?
we do not. We're going straight to,
Do we need to have an executive
you like
session?
us to
If
add
so,
it to
we
the
can
end
add
of
it to the end of the board meeting.
That would be great, and I'd like to have it before personnel vote.
okay,
How? Mike, can you help us on that?
Sure, you can place the executive session anywhere on the regular meeting agenda you want to, so that's fine.
okay,
If
so,
if that's the board's will, I mean, the board has to approve the agenda.
okay. So I think that has to be the will of the board. I'm not sure if one person can request an executive session. So I think I'll ask, yeah, I think I'll ask that, I don't think we can have a vote at work session, but let me ask for just a show of hands of how many people want an executive session
I
in
have
the
a
board meeting.
question.
Yes, Ms. Hull.
Can you just explain, I'm looking at number 11 for this agenda, and it has an executive session, so would this be an additional executive session?
We don't have time to go into executive session
That's okay.
during
I
the work
needed that
session.
clarity.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, 7 o'clock starts our board meeting, and it's already publicly announced. So we can move this executive session in the work session item to our regular board meeting right before the personnel report.
And I'm fine, I just wanted to have it after executive session, the vote on personnel. How do we do it?
Okay, so can I ask for a show of hands for how many members would like an executive session during our regular board meeting to discuss this personnel? Okay, we've got 2, 3,
I'd be willing to
We've got
support it,
4.
just general.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, that's the majority. Okay, so Ms. Palmer, before the adjournment? Okay, thank you. And that's, yeah, so right before, okay, at the very end, right? Okay, thank you. Okay, I don't know where we are. Policy updates. Okay, policy draft, item A, board policy GAEB, sexual harassment of employees, as well as board policy JCAC, sexual harassment of students. Are there any questions on either of those? Okay. I see none, so we'll move down to item B, policies for board approval. And these will be policies IDAA, Career Technical and Agricultural Education, the CTAE program, and JBCD, Transfer and Withdrawals. And these were discussed, sent out for public comment, and are now up for board approval at our regular meeting tonight. questions, comments? All right. Item C, future policies for review from the board. I do remember from our previous meeting, we talked about reviving policy GBRH on professional personal leave and absences. Is that a conversation that you all still wish to have, and do you want to have it tonight? We have 7 minutes left.
I don't know that I think I was one of the ones that asked the board for their support in revisiting that. I don't know that we would have time tonight, but certainly with the board's support, would like to see it on maybe the September agenda where we can talk about it a little bit more in detail.
Okay. And I will share the document that you shared with me on the suggestions that you had before our next meeting, and then that can guide the conversation. So, Ms. Palmer, can we make a note to add that to our policy agenda item for our September meeting? Thank you. And then there was also a conversation about the unstructured break time coming back to the board. Is that still something that the board is interested in doing? In our last update, board update that Ms. Palmer shared, there was a note about this policy. So are we still wanting to have further conversation about this policy? That's a no?
That's a no.
Okay. So we are going to move on from further discussion on that policy. Unstructured play. I don't remember the number of it. Okay. All right. So those were the only two that I remember that were coming up. So we've got one moved to September, and we're good on future policies. Okay, let's move to now information items for board and community reports. We have our early Head Start Policy Council meeting minutes and reports. Mr. Denson, are you still a representative on that policy?
I am, and nothing sizable to report outside of this. It was one of our shorter meetings, actually. So, yeah.
Okay. All right. And that also, it just made me recall, in our retreat, I will add an item for us to discuss assignments for our community boards, so that if we need people to rotate out, we can assign them at the retreat, okay?
And connected to that, I'm sorry, because these reports always run a month behind. I think I announced at the June meeting that we had elected new parents to the board, and so this update actually has a list of all the parents. So if y'all are interested, y'all can see there.
All right. Thank you so much. Okay, item B, Community Oversight Committee report. Dr. Evans?
It's what Tim just said. It was the stuff we reported back in June. We did not meet in July.
Okay.
But I am going to have to ask if someone else could take that responsibility. My teaching schedule has changed, and so unfortunately on Tuesday mornings I will not be available.
And the next meeting is in September?
The next meeting is actually this Tuesday coming.
Okay. Is there anyone willing to take over this particular, Ms. Davis? Okay. And everyone's good with Ms. Davis taking over? Thank you so much for your service, Ms. Davis. So you will be taking over the Community Oversight Committee reporting. Dr. Evans, if you don't mind just kind of circling back with her through email on the meeting dates, so she's got them down. Okay, and the Sustainability Committee, moving down to item C, we've got 4 minutes. We had some pretty lengthy conversation.
I would just point the board to looking at the report, particularly Tylash's Mumford's report about green space on campuses and improving green space, which would also improve our heat management. And then also the Cherry Street numbers are pretty well laid out there. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out.
I do have some questions, so I will be circling back to you. The Cherry Hill thing was kind of a surprise. I thought it would be a more impactful, but I don't know if that's a standard, so I'll talk with you later. Okay, are there other questions about any of the community board reports? All right, we'll go ahead and move to item 12, to adjourn the work
Dr.
session.
Anderson, sorry.
Uh-oh.
Sorry, it's me.
Yes.
We didn't do the financial report, but I'm going to move it to the board meeting because you have to vote and he can give it then.
Okay.
If that's okay.
Yeah, I'm so sorry.
That's
We
okay.
skipped right over it. Mr. Griner, that was not on purpose. Trust. All right, so we will move that item to our regular meeting. That is starting in 3 minutes. Do we need to vote to adjourn? I can't remember.
No,
Okay. All right, see you guys in a minute.
your work session is just calling. You the boss.
Thank you, everyone, for your patience. We had a long work session, so we kind of had to take a little bit of time to transition. We appreciate your patience. We are ready to go ahead and start our August regular board meeting. I will go ahead and call the meeting to order. We do have a quorum. Dr. Hooker, can you please do roll call?
Yes, Madam Chair. Ms. Heidi Hensley, Ms. Claudia Butts,
Here.
Ms. Linda Davis,
Here.
Dr. Patricia Yeager,
Here.
Mr. Tim Denson,
Here.
Dr. Mombi Anderson,
Here.
Dr. Lakeisha Gant,
Here.
Ms. Nicole Hull,
Here.
and Mr. Mark Evans.
Here.
All right, wonderful. So we do have a quorum. Now we'll move on to item number 3, our silent meditation and Pledge of Allegiance. Let's start with silent meditation. Thank you. And now we will move on to our Pledge of Allegiance. If everyone could please stand, and the flag is to your left. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, and let's move on to item 4. We've got our recognitions and awards, our favorite part of the agenda.
All right. Good evening, Dr. Hooker, Dr. Anderson, board members. We have a quick recognition tonight, along with our Human Resources and Transportation departments. I will ask Dr. Blankenship to make her way up. As you are aware, last year, following a revision to the district's professional and personnel leave and absence policy, we began paying out unused sick leave to PSERS employees who retire from CCSD with 10 or more years who are not eligible for teacher retirement system benefits. We did a few payments last year, and we are here tonight to recognize 3 recent retirees from our transportation department, one of whom we are pleased is able to join us this evening. At this time, I'd like to ask Ms. Evelyn Barrow and Mr. Swift to come up. As they make their way up, I'll tell you a little bit about Ms. Barrow. Ms. Barrow retired in May after 17 years as a bus driver with the district. She also previously served as a hall monitor at Cedar Shoals High School. Mr. Sherrod Swift, our transportation director, says that Ms. Barrow always had a warm personality, great attendance, and was always willing to help the department or anyone else in need. He says she also had the cleanest bus in the whole department. Since retiring in May, and we enjoyed celebrating with her at our retirement dinner, Ms. Barrow has vowed to stay active. She has joined the Silver Sneakers Fitness Program at the YWCO here in Athens and is spending more time playing pickleball. Is it fun? Yeah. For her 68.75 unused sick days, we are pleased to present Ms. Barrow with a check for $2,250. Congratulations and continued best wishes in your well-earned and well-deserved retirement. Now, although our other 2 retirees were unable to join us tonight, we also want to acknowledge them, Jason Molina and Sandra Ryden. Mr. Molina retired from CCSD in May after nearly 17 years of service as well as a bus driver. Mr. Swift said Mr. Molina always had a go-get-it mentality and that anytime he was asked to do an extra route or help out with other tasks, he was always willing to do so. Mr. Molina sends his regrets that he was unable to attend tonight, as he and his wife have already moved and begun a missionary assignment in the country of Colombia. For his 67.25 days of unused sick leave, Mr. Molina will be receiving a check for $2,250. And finally, we want to recognize Ms. Sandra Ryden, another bus driver who retired from CCSD this past May after 23 years of friendly and dependable service. For her 122.5 days of unused sick leave, she will receive a check for $6,750. Now, that's a big check. Let's give all three of these wonderful former employees and retirees another round of applause. Thank you all so much, and we appreciate you being here tonight. And lastly, tonight, we want to give just a brief plug that we have opened up our Employee of the Month nominations for the school year. As a reminder, any member of the CCSD community, whether they be a student, parent, guardian, staff member, or community member, may nominate any full-time district employee with at least 1 full year of service for this award. We will bring our first winner before you for recognition at next month's meeting. As you can see on the screen, you can go to the address listed to complete that quick nomination. Thank you all so much. I'll turn it back over to you, Dr. Anderson, for any board recognitions you might have.
Thank you so much, Dr. Moore, and congratulations, retirees. Are there any board celebrations that any members have to report? Yes, Ms. Hull?
Just well done on our open house. I mean, across the district, there seemed to be so much joy with the return of school and so much effort being put into it. So just great job, district.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. I think we can all, as board members, and particularly Superintendent Hooker, can attest to a really wonderful beginning to our school year, and we really appreciate the work that the whole district has done to fill positions, to get the things done, to get school buildings open, get our students to class, all the things. So thank you so much, everyone. All right, we will now move on to item number 5, public comment. And I'll just make a brief statement before we begin with our public comment. According to policy BCBI, each individual speaker will have up to 3 minutes to speak, and at this point, remarks must be concluded. No speaker will indulge in personal attacks, and all comments are to be addressed directly to the Board of Education. To protect the privacy of students, speakers shall refrain from identifying specific students by name. No individual or group shall be retaliated against in any manner for speaking during public participation. Personal concerns may be addressed in writing to the superintendent and the president of the Board of Education. Written copies of comments may also be provided to the board. At a board meeting, board members will not respond to questions or comments from the public. The district may respond to public comment as needed or appropriately within 10 working days. Lastly, the use of obscene, profane, vulgar, physically threatening, or abusive remarks will not be allowed. Loud and boisterous conduct or comments by speakers or members of the audience are also not allowed. All right, our first public comment will be from Charlie Maddox.
Good afternoon, Superintendent, Board Chair, and all of the board members. I stand here today. My name is Charlie Maddox. I live at 115 Avalon Drive, Athens, Georgia. I have 5 children that are graduates of Clark County School District, and so am I. I stand today as we prepare to celebrate our 60th year graduation date, 1964. But on this day, I do come in honor of one of our greatest leaders, Dr. James Holston, who came 2 years before I did and rendered extensive service to this district. And again, I want to come on behalf of him and his family to petition to have the field at Cedar Shoals renamed as the James Lewis Holston Field. With that, I just thank all of you for taking this into consideration, and I am proud to be here. And again, 60-year graduate. Thank you. I don't think many of y'all were here then.
Thank you. All right, we will move on to Dr. Tawana Maddox.
Hello. I concur with Attorney Hull. This has been an exciting beginning of the school year. I enjoyed going over to the Classic City High School in Winterville the first day, cheering our young people on, and I'm excited with what's to come. Tonight, I am coming in concern of a policy that I really want you all to look at. As you know, there has been a situation regarding a young person who by definition fits the McKinney-Vento policy. He was allowed to attend pre-K through 4th grade at an elementary school here with a sense of belonging, family, and consistency. His 2 sisters, under the same conditions, matriculated through the same elementary school and are doing well in middle school. And then on the first day of school, his family is told that he has to go to his own school. He can't complete 5th grade at the school he has attended for 6 years, falling under the McKinney-Vento definition. Furthermore, after he was told he had to go to another school, his mom and auntie appealed it, and from Thursday to the end of Monday, there had not been a response, and that is unacceptable when there's a young person who's anxious about returning to a school where he found a sense of consistency. The first line of the definition of homelessness include youths who are sharing the housing of other persons due to loss of housing, economic hardship, or a similar reason. This young man and his little brother who is entering kindergarten fall into this category. I ask that he is allowed to finish his year out at his school that he's been at for 6 years, and that his younger brother attends there as well, so that no further hardship is caused. I also am concerned that the school did not support this family by allowing them to tell them to fill out a school choice form, because this didn't just happen. They've been there all these years. There was school choice. This could have been remedied a different way. And my thing is, what about the children? What about the social and emotional growth and academic growth of our young people when they've gone through trauma? And so he's in a school. He's been there for years. Let him finish his 5th grade year. That's a big deal, 5th year. Just ask that we do the right thing by all children. I'm not asking for exceptions, but however, sometimes exceptions is equity, and we need to do the right things by our young people. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Maddox. Our next speaker is Joyce Hurd.
Good afternoon. My name is Joyce Hurd. To Dr. Hooker and to the school board, thank you for allowing me this opportunity to speak. I come here this evening to speak in reference to my nephew, Ashton Hurd. Ashton is 10 years old, and he has attended Whitehead Road Elementary School for 6 years, consecutive years. And this would be his 7th year, and this would be the year that he would graduate from elementary school. Ashton has been through a lot in the 10 years of living. He's been traumatized, he's been uprooted from one home to another one. But I give glory and honor to God who allowed them to come into my home. One thing that I'm excited about is that he found stability at Whitehead Road Elementary School. Whitehead Road is just not a learning institution for us, but it was also a home away from home. I am very grateful to the principal. I am very grateful to the teachers and to the staff for all of the support that they rendered to me taking in 4 additional children. So I appeal to each one of you today to give Ashton an opportunity to go back to stable ground. And we all understand that familiarity is very important in the education of our youth. Ashton is very shy, and he's had some struggles, but he has become familiar with the staff, the teachers, and also the layout of that school. And he wants the opportunity to go back and to try to excel. So I ask that you all would visit the McKinley veto, again, visit the policies. We're not trying to cause any trouble. I want to give a very special thanks to Dr. Hooker and also the school board for all of the good work that y'all do for the children and the schools. But please consider this situation and allow Ashton to go back to a home, away from home, where he can strive for the betterment. I'm trying to keep him out of jail and keep him out of hell. Thank you.
Thank you. We will move to Ashton Hurd.
Good morning. My name is Ashton Hurd, and I am 10 years old, and I have been in Whitehead for 6 years.
I'm sorry, can you start over? We couldn't hear. Yeah.
Good afternoon. My name is Ashton Hurd, and I have been in Whitehead for 6 years. And I just want to continue there with my friends and my family. Please let me continue there.
Continuing with public comment, Jordan Reams. And if I mispronounce your last name, I apologize.
Good evening. My name is Jordan Reams, and I'm the sister of Ashton Hurd. I'm here to support him while he is going through his struggles switching from school to school. I've been at Whitehead for 6 years, and I actually graduated there in 5th grade with my family and friends. And just to see him go through that is kind of hard because I don't understand, but I know it's a lot for him to take to let go of his friends just to transfer to another school. So I ask that he continues at Whitehead Road. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That concludes. Do we have one more? I'm so sorry. Janet Hurd. I'm so sorry. I think I skipped over one person. So yes, Janet Hurd.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Janet Hurd, and I am the mother of Ashton Hurd and Austin Connerly. Ashton has been a scholar at Whitehead Road Elementary School since pre-K. He was able to attend the school the last 2 years through the McKinley Vento program, despite him being zoned for Johnny Lay Burks. I do not understand why my request for my children to attend Whitehead Road Elementary School through the JBC homeless program has been denied, especially since it is Ashton's last year. I'm sorry. Our living situation has remained the same throughout the process of him being in the McKinley Vento program. And me and my 4 children share housing with a relative on account of economic hardship. And although hardship is still present in my life, I am doing the best I can to persevere and prevail in the life goals that I have for me and my children. And it would be very helpful to receive the support and resources that my children's district can possibly offer them. I understand there are policies put in place, and for a reason, but I believe that academic well-being should be prioritized. And familiarity is very important in the academic development of a child and should not be so easily dismissed. My plea for you today is to reevaluate the situation at hand and make the decision with the children in mind. His sisters graduated from Whitehead Road, and I would love to see the same outcome for Ashton and Austin as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone who came to speak in public comment today. I don't think we have any other speakers unless I skipped over someone else. Okay. Whew. Okay, we will now move to item 6, adoption of the agenda as presented. Would someone
So
like
moved.
to? Okay. Second?
Second.
All right. Motion made by Mr. Denson, seconded by Dr. Evans. All in favor of adopting the agenda as present, please raise your hand. Say aye.
Aye.
All right, that motion passes. Okay, we will move on to item 8, the consent agenda. That was,
Superintendent's report.
sorry, superintendent's report. I am so sorry, Dr. Hooker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I only have a few announcements for comments for today. Again, I'd like to reiterate to thank our community for its support during our first 2 days of school. Our faith-based churches, community leaders, and Black Greeks showed up to our schools and welcomed our students back to school. Your support is greatly appreciated, and we look forward to a continued partnership. We're off to a strong start for the 24-25 school year with enrollment at 12,739 students as of yesterday. That's up about 300 students over the beginning of the school year last year, 2% increase. I'm also pleased to report that we have nearly all of our classroom positions filled, with only 11 certified teacher vacancies and 5 paraprofessional vacancies. Just over 99% of our positions are filled. So I applaud the efforts that we've done to make that happen. Many thanks to those of you who were able to attend Clark Middle School ribbon cutting ceremony. Classes are off to a great start in our new building. Our milestone scores and AP test scores from last year were released. We saw a growth in many subject areas among the subgroups, including our special education students and our African American students. We're gearing up for a big night of football at Classic City Championship that will be held next Thursday, August the 15th. Cedar Shows will play at Clark Central. The kickoff will be at 6:30 p.m. I hope many of you will be able to join us to cheer on both teams. That concludes my announcements for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Hooker. And yes, wonderful start to the school year. We will now move to item number 8, the consent agenda that was determined at the work session. We have 6 items on the consent agenda. Would someone like to make a motion?
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, that motion has been made by Dr. Yeager, seconded by Ms. Hall. All in favor, raise of hands, say aye.
Aye.
All right, that motion passes. Okay, so now we've got items, number 9, items for individual action. As I call each item, if you have some questions or concerns, you are welcome to voice them before we make a formal vote. Start with item A, Foothills FY25 Intergovernmental Agreement.
I just noticed that item, the school bus purchase, which I asked to be on the individual action, was on the consent agenda. And the Foothills, which was not asked to be on the off the consent, was put off the consent.
Okay. Oh, yes, we did take Foothills off. Ms. Davis, you had a report. Dr. Gant had some questions.
That we answered.
Yes, that's right. Okay. We have already voted for the consent agenda. What do we do?
No, we haven't actually.
Motion to rescind that approval of the consent agenda.
Okay.
Get a second, approve that, then amend the agenda.
Okay. All right. Can I get a motion to rescind?
I'll make a
vote?
motion to rescind the
Second.
consent agenda.
Okay. That motion's made by Dr. Evans, seconded by Ms. Davis. Can I get a raise of hands and ayes?
Aye.
Okay, that motion passes. We have rescinded the approval of the consent agenda. So now we need to discuss amending the agenda.
I'd like to make a motion that we amend the agenda to reflect the will of the board.
Okay, so that motion has been made, and that is to move the school bus purchase 2425 item to our individual action, and to move Foothills FY25 intergovernmental agreement to our consent agenda. Okay. I need a second.
Second.
Okay, did we include the vans in that? Or-
No. The vans were already in the consent agenda.
The vans were in the consent agenda, yes, sir.
Okay. I have a motion and a second, right? Okay, motion made by Dr. Evans, seconded by Dr. Yeager. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that motion passes. So now we are revisiting the consent agenda, the amended consent agenda. Can I get a motion to vote?
I move that we approve the amended consent agenda.
All right, I need a second.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Dr. Yeager, seconded by Mr. Denson. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
All right, that motion passes. Ms. Davis, I'm assuming that was an aye? Okay, thank you. That motion passes. Now we are at item 9, and let me refresh my browser. Okay. The first item is the purchase of the school buses for the 24-25 school year. Questions, comments? It was pulled, so I assume that there are, oh, we need a motion. We need a motion before we can open the floor. Is there a motion?
I make a motion that we purchase these school buses as listed by the district.
All right, now the floor is open for questions, comments, concerns. Does it need a second? Oh, okay. All right, that motion's made by Mr., I'm so sorry, by Dr. Evans and seconded by Ms. Hull. Now we have the floor open for board discussion. I believe, Mr. Denson, you were the one who asked for it to be pulled. Can you start?
Yeah, I will be opposing this motion. I think I've spoken enough to this, but I just do not think it behooves the ongoing health of our students and our community for us to be, again, purchasing buses that we'll be using for the next 20 years that have such damaging impact on our environment and the health of our community. So I'll be opposing this item.
Okay, any other questions before we vote? Yes, Dr. Gant?
I do. Where did it go on our agenda? I was trying to pull it back up to.
It's now
figure out
item 9A. If you refresh, you'll see it pop up. Did you want us to wait in case you had questions?
I don't see it yet, so it may have a hard time articulating my thoughts, but I would like to see maybe some type of compromise with this plan. I certainly want to support the district in being able to purchase buses because we need them now. And we're not going to probably make a decision to go and purchase all electric buses right now. And our students need to be transported. However, one of the things that stuck out to me that Mr. Gurley mentioned was that part of the grant that I think the second round is that they requested 2 electric buses, and they were denied because that was going to be our pilot. And so I would like to see something. I want to support like getting most of these buses, but I wonder if there can be a compromise with maybe a pilot of 1 bus or 2 buses, or even some type of even if it's a direction that we're going to pilot with ACC, one of their electric buses, while we purchase these others. Like, I know it's not practical for us to go and replace our whole fleet of buses. And I also know that, you know, with sustainability and things like that, it is critical, and districts have to make hard choices, like prioritizing really what is going to be the priority at this point. Survival, getting to school so people can get to work, or, you know, ongoing conversations about buses. But I do think there's an opportunity somewhere to support this plan and for the district to make a small step. And so I don't know if I'm sort of rambling, but I would love to see this tabled and brought back, perhaps even next month or the month after, with everything that's here, but with a slight action that might be a compromise in the absence of our recommendations from the Sustainability Committee, in the absence of a grant right now. And even if we had a grant, that's going to take time. I still think there are some steps that we can take that will cost, but I think there's a compromise somewhere. So I would like to make a substitute motion that this is brought back in September, if that's feasible, or October, if that's feasible, with a more concrete compromise.
Okay. All right, so there is a substitute motion on the floor now.
I'll second the substitute motion.
Okay. The floor is open to discuss the substitute motion unless you all are ready to vote.
Have a
Ms.
discussion.
Davis.
So in bringing back a plan for the substitute motion, I would like to see the inventory of buses and their, what do you call it? Normally it's a depreciation kind of place schedule, but could we not see, life cycle, thank you. I'd love to see a life cycle of our existing fleet so that we can make these decisions not in a vacuum. And again, with that, the benefits that we saw in the earlier presentation about what the cost would be at that 12-year cycle for these electric buses when we've got to spend $500,000 provided all of a sudden competition just killed us, but that we can't get that for less at that point. But I would love to see that life cycle for the transportation to make this a lot clearer in terms of its impact overall.
Okay. Are there any other comments before we vote on the substitute motion? All right, so there's a motion and a second for a substitute motion to table this item until there was not specification on the date. You said September or October. If you could provide some specification, that might be helpful.
Sure, September. And if we need to, you know, extend it out another month or so, I know that there's probably a timeline that we got to get buses, you know, and so I don't want to prolong it, but I don't want us to be like victims of having a long conversation knowing that we're not going to immediately get all of these buses, but I still think we can make a modified plan.
Okay. All right, so there's a substitute motion on the floor. Can I get a raise of hands and a yay for approval of the substitute motion to table until September? All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All opposed?
Nay.
Okay, so that motion passes 6-2. This item has been tabled until our September meeting. All right, let's move to item B, transportation push-to-talk system for school buses. I need a vote?
Yes.
Motion, sorry.
I move that we, I have a question, so that comes later. I'll move that we approve the transportation push-to-talk system for school buses.
Okay, second?
Second.
Okay. That motion is made by Ms. Davis, seconded by, I believe, Dr. Yeager.
And so.
All right, now the floor is open, yes.
For
Ms.
the
Davis?
question then, so my question is, was there an RFP sent out for this device? There's so many changes so rapidly coming across to allow us to do quicker communication with our cell phones. Was there an RFP to solicit the most efficient way of achieving this?
And I'll let Dr. Askew answer this, but I believe we did do I know we did do an RFP, and our bus drivers cannot use cell phones while driving. It's against the law, so that's why we went again with this talkative system, and it gives us better range up to the Atlanta area. In my last conversation, I believe with Mr. Swift, he was saying this gives us range to talk to a bus driver who's in Atlanta. The system that we currently have is limited. Sometimes if you go to certain parts of Athens, Clarke County, they're not able to communicate with each other. So that's why we did that. No cell phones are allowed for bus drivers.
I'm sorry, I meant Wi-Fi. Is this Wi-Fi enabled?
I'll turn that over to
I believe it does operate over the Wi-Fi system, but the actual device itself, as Dr. Hooker alluded to, is push to talk. So it'll be hands-free essentially for the drivers.
And so the RFP did go out to multiple vendors?
They did. It was put out. It went through our purchasing process.
Okay. Did we have a lot of response?
I'm not sure on the exact number of bids. I'd have to pull that information for you.
Thank you. If you can just let me know, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, other questions, comments? All right, there's a motion and a second. Let's go ahead and vote. All in favor, aye, and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that motion passes. Item C, the DOE assistance in developing local facilities plan through FY29. Mr. Gilbreth, I believe you were going to follow up with Ms. Davis and provide that document.
Ms.
Okay.
Palmer sent it to all board members.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Palmer, for ever so efficient. So we need a motion.
I move that we approve the DOE assistance plan.
All right, motion made by Dr. Yeager, seconded by Ms. Hull. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
I did have a question. If I could-
Oh, I'm so sorry. Floor is open for discussion.
Thank you. And I'm fine with this. I was able to look over a little bit of the last one, but I guess moving forward, next time we vote on this, I think it would be good for us to see the actual plan we're voting on, which I don't think was attached. It was the
Yes,
This
sir.
is for the next.
Oh, we're just getting the
next
assistance.
plan.
Yeah, this is just the assistance from
Gotcha.
DOE.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally pulled that back. Thank you.
And Ms. Palmer has already sent us our previous 5-year plan, yes. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Are there any other questions, comments? Ms. Davis?
Is the DOE the only provider that we could use for helping us develop this plan? Is there a reason that we chose them instead of going out for an RFP?
Yeah, it's their system, so we have to enter our data into Georgia DOE's. If you want to apply for capital outlay from the state of Georgia, we have to use their system.
Okay.
So-
And so this is more of a training session than,
Well, no, this is just they actually get 5 other districts together to review our plan, and they just facilitate us getting the information into their computer system, which enabled us to withdraw funds in the future if we want to do a capital outlay application.
great. Do you get to pick the other systems?
No.
They pick them for us.
Well, it's Dr. Hooker was, when he was a social worker, he was one of our candidates that reviewed our last plan, so. Usually there's the local people around
Somebody
you that are familiar.
comparable.
Yeah,
Okay.
they review your plan.
So it's a pay-to-play, basically?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like the DOE system, but then they're making you pay to use the system so
Yeah.
that they can review whether they're gonna.
Well, the good thing is you don't pay
No
anything. Their services are free.
Oh, okay, so, okay,
Even
so,
voting.
okay.
Thank you for letting us know.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Are there any other questions before we vote? All right, all in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
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 Okay, that motion passes. Moving to item D, the job description for the CTAE director position that is currently held, and if I understand this right, the same person will stay in this position, so this is just a rewrite of the job description. Okay, can I get a motion? Second?
Second?
All right, motion made by Ms. Hull, seconded by Dr. Yeager. Any questions, comments, concerns? Okay, We'll go ahead and vote. Can I get a raise of hands and say aye if you approve?
Aye.
Okay. Am I guessing, Ms. Davis, that this is a nay?
This is a nay on this one. I just
Okay.
don't know enough about.
Okay.
This is a big area for me, so I need more information.
Understood. Okay, so for the record, Ms. Palmer, that's one nay. Okay. Let's see, moving to item E, policies for board approval. We've got two standing out there. Career Technical and CTAE Education Program, policy IDAA, and JBCD transfers and withdrawals. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Okay, motion made by Mr. Denson, seconded by Ms. Davis. Floor is open. No questions, comments? All right, we'll go ahead and call a vote. All in favor, raise hand, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that motion passes. Policy drafts. Let's see. So these are two policies that are going to go out for public comment this month. Nope, sorry, Mr. Pruitt.
Yes, so this is a little unique. So these are related to the new federal Title IX regulations, which you may have seen in the news. So towards the end of April, U.S. Department of Education finally came out with the new Title IX regulations. Lawsuits were filed everywhere for stays. Stays were granted in various federal circuits. Actually, on July 31st, the 11th Circuit, which includes Georgia, stayed the enforcement of those by the Department of Education until further order of the court. We went ahead, and I discussed with staff, we went ahead and I have actually drafted these based on the government put out a drafting resource. I had to fill in some other things. I'm satisfied that if the stay were lifted, this would satisfy the law. Would it be optimal? I can guarantee you it's probably not because I did it myself. But it's sort of the board's choice. If you would like to go ahead and have something in place ready to implement if the stay gets lifted, with short notice, we could go ahead and adopt these. Need to suspend the rules first, of course, because we wouldn't be putting it out for public comment. Then you could go ahead and adopt these as an emergency measure to be effective if and when the stay is lifted. The alternative is we'll just stay pat, rely on the stay. Worst case scenario, if the stay is lifted with short notice, we may need a call meeting to get these in place.
All right, given that information. Yes,
So
Dr. Yeager.
would it be appropriate to move to accept these policies? We have to first vote to suspend that policy. So
Yeah, suspend the rules to allow
Suspend the rules to allow.
consideration of these policies without public comment.
Okay. So I guess my only question, does anybody want to make that motion, I guess?
And you may want to hear from, this affects HR and student support, so you may want to hear from Dr. Blankenship and Dr. Scott as to their opinions on which way to go.
That might be super helpful, Dr. Blankenship.
Sure. I actually spoke with Mr. Pruitt and asked him if he would go ahead and draft policies for us because we really don't know when this stay or if it will be lifted, and we would like to be prepared. The new regulations are quite different from the current regulations, and so to have something that could potentially be put in place immediately upon the lifting of the stay would be very helpful guidance for us as we navigate those situations if they occur.
Okay. So what I hear you saying is it would be very helpful to your department if these policies were approved tonight.
And to student services as well.
And to student
if I may
services.
speak for Dr. Scott.
Understood. Okay. Questions? Yes, Dr. Evans.
I'm really not a big fan of us passing policy without running it past the public. We have a stay. I mean, if we can table buses, we could table this and put this out and let the people take a look at this policy. And then we could vote for it. I'm sure that stay's not going to get lifted between now and November 2nd.
I wouldn't predict anything in the federal court system.
Yeah, but.
We've seen a lot happen in the last 4 weeks.
Yeah.
That we didn't expect to happen.
Trust me, on higher ed, we know. So, I would like us to maybe put this out for public comment, so that way the people have an idea of what this is. And then, if and when it gets lifted, then we can bring it back and vote on it right then and there. I'm sure they're not going to tell us that we have to put this into play the next day, because that's just not feasible.
I would not predict anything in the federal court.
Yeah, that's true. That is absolutely true. What I will ask then, if it's the will of the board to go ahead and send this out to public comment for the month and just kind of see what happens. If we do end up having to come back to this room and make a vote to approve this, it's got to be a quorum, and y'all got to show up. And it can't be like herding cats if this decision is made by the board.
I trust us to show up when we're called.
It takes moving mountains to get 9, even 5 people to
We only
meet
need 5.
last minute. So I'm just saying, we're going to have to make those concessions. Yes.
I'm just real sensitive to the few things that we allow our public to participate in. I think it's just so important that we honor and respect that opportunity for them to weigh in on decisions that affect their children.
Yeah.
And how we operate and how we spend their money. And so I think that's at the top of the priorities for me.
Okay, Dr. Yeager.
For what it's worth, and I'll just throw again, not trying to influence the decision, but what you have is the minimum bare bones.
Yeah.
It's the model in the drafting resource the US DOE put out, plus my fill-in from current policies and other parts of the regulation itself to fill in the blanks that the model didn't have. I mean, if you want the public to see it, that's fine. There's not going to be much anybody can change in this.
Yeah, that was going to be my comment. Thank you for interrupting and saying that, because that was my comment, is that I imagine you based it having worked with you on policy, you probably based it entirely on bare bones. We're not going to have a lot of wiggle room anyway. And I'm also hearing and sensitive to what I hear from our very successful HR team who got 99% filled positions, and our great student services, that this would help them, and that seems very important to have something in place to work on. We can always call it back a month, 2 months from now and amend it, but having the bare bones on the books for them would make a difference, it sounds like. So I would support us suspending the rules, putting this policy in place so they have some stability, and then we can adjust it in the coming months if we want to, and put something else out for public comment. I think that seems like a process that helps them and allows for public comment still in the future.
So then it does sound to me like somebody, at least one person, wants to make a motion to suspend.
I would support that.
I would go ahead then and just go ahead and make the motion, and then.
I move to suspend the rules and allow us to pass this policy.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Dr. Yeager, seconded by Ms. Hull. Are there any other comments before we vote? Dr. Gant, yes.
Right now, while the stay is in order, what are the guiding parameters?
So that means the old regulation's still in effect. So,
Okay.
So if you get to the point of adopting this one, I'll give you some language for the motion, but basically I want you to adopt this to be effective only if and when the stay is lifted.
I see. And then in the absence of the stay being lifted, right, there are policies, there is guidance right now, I guess is what I'm trying to get at.
Right, so we're operating under the guidance, under the regulations that came in during 2020. And so we've had those regulations in place since then.
Okay. Yeah, I would tend to agree with Dr. Evans. I think, just as a matter of protocol, if we currently have something, then putting it out for public, at least public viewing. I don't anticipate it being a lot of, like feedback. But I think as a matter of governance, particularly, and it's not really about board-type governance with each other, I think I would support putting it forward. And so I won't support the suspension of the rules when we vote on that.
Okay. All right. Yes, Ms. Hull.
Just a clarifying question for the attorney, because I want to make sure I make the right vote. So if we do not suspend the rules and adopt this, we will be operating under the policies from 2020.
We're going to be doing that until the stay's lifted anyway.
Right, so.
Once the stay's lifted, though, we can't operate under those anymore.
So should the federal court decide to lift the stay before we come back to adopt these policies, is the district in jeopardy of not being in alignment with Godot?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Is that the first time? This is the federal thing. Is it the first time? And what are the consequences? I really want to know that, because I want us to be proactive when it's apparent that there's a risk and there's harm to be done. I'm not seeing that urgency here. I apologize.
So I would say, and this is based on the very limited experience we had with the critical race theory, that we would be possibly in danger of losing funding from Godot, because we got that call that if we did not act or vote for that policy, that was a option. So, and I don't know if that's right, because I'm not the attorney, but that's what my experience was when we had to make that tough decision.
If I could just add some clarity, the danger is not necessarily with the state government. The danger is with not being in compliance with federal law around Title IX cases. So if someone brings a Title IX case for one of our staff members or one of our students, and we anticipate that there could potentially be more because of the broadness of the new regulations, then not having something in place that abides by the new regulations could jeopardize the processing of that particular case. So in that case, you would need to come back, I would say immediately, and pass or approve the new policy.
Okay. My brain is not able to process this information well. So if somebody files a complaint and we're still operating under a policy that day, we haven't met to vote, we're going to meet the next day, but that day, you're still operating under the old policy, we're jeopardizing what exactly?
Well, you're breaking the law. I think your question is, what are they going to do to you for breaking the law? And who knows? That's okay. I mean, it would be enforced by Office of Civil Rights. So whatever the smorgasbord is available to them.
I got you. Okay. Mr. Denson, I think you have not spoken yet.
Okay. I mean, this is something that does affect, right, hundreds of school districts across across South Carolina, Florida, and Georgia, correct?
Right.
Yeah. And so I'm just thinking, so I agree with those risks that are there, but so we literally have hundreds of school districts that are having to go through this right now, and I cannot imagine that every single one of them is going to be able to get everything in place before the stay would finish either. But that being said, I guess I see no reason why we can't do both. Go ahead and do this motion that's been crafted that doesn't take place unless the stay is lifted. At the same time, send out this policy for review so we can get feedback from any parents or students or community members who are concerned about it, and we can still act upon those concerns afterwards. I just don't see why we can't do both, and that way we're kind of safe, so.
That's a good point, and not, again, not to try to influence too much, but yeah, I mean, if the stay does last for 2 or 3 more months, that just means we're going to have that much more time to digest information, refine this, and probably, and then probably would bring it back to you with an amended version. But this would be the backup if we don't get that opportunity.
Okay. Yes, Dr. Evans.
I dislike legislating out of fear greatly. And while, I understand, I mean, higher ed, we have no idea what we're doing right now. I mean, that's the big topic of conversation on my campus up there is how do we operate? How is this going to, so I get it. I'm not a big fan of suspending rules. We have rules for a reason. And so I want to make this very clear that this needs to be a very singular case. I don't want this to become a habit. So I want it made clear to staff, right, that as far as I'm concerned, I'm not going to vote out of fear anymore, right? I understand why this has to be done. I think Mr. Denson has a great idea, but I would rather us, work together on this. So.
Yeah, I think we're complicating this. So there's a world, as Mr. Denson stated, where we can do and both, right? We can suspend the rules tonight. This can be approved as a tentative board policy given the stay. And if it is lifted, we can continue to have this on the policy discussions for future board meetings. And Ms. Palmer, I can make sure that it is in September or October or whenever the stay is lifted. And it can also be in public comment. All 3 of these things can happen at the same time. I think we are overcomplicating something that we can absolutely do tonight. That's what it sounds like to me. So I don't think that there is a motion on the floor to suspend, or is there? Okay, there is a motion to suspend by Dr. Yeager. Thank you, and seconded by Mrs. Hull. So we are going to go ahead and call a vote. And for clarity, if this vote moves forward, we will then be able to make a motion to approve this policy. So just for clarity, if this vote goes forward, another motion will have to be made to approve it. Okay? All right, all in favor of that? Suspending the rules. Okay.
That's amazing.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, all opposed?
That's a no, and in the 12 years I've been on this board, I've never known us to take a preemptive vote to suspend something that may happen that will have to be modified, even if it does happen.
Okay, so that motion has been approved with a 6-2. So now we need another motion to approve this policy, these 2 policies, should the federal government make a decision to lift the hold on the new policies.
Yeah, and I can give you this language later, but I would suggest the motion would be to approve the policies to be effective as of the effective date of the expiration or lifting of the stay of enforcement issued by the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals on July 21st, 2024, in case number 24-12444.
So moved.
Second.
All right, that motion has been made.
Could I ask for a friendly amendment to pass that motion with the language also that the policies will be sent out to the public for review simultaneously?
Okay. All right, so the motion has been made according to Mr. Pruitt's language with the amendment that it goes out for public comment in the meantime, and I will add another amendment that these 2 policies are placed on the September or whatever future meeting we need to have, that we have after this decision is made.
A new motion because the other motion passed, right?
No, your motion
No.
passed was to suspend the rules.
Yeah.
Okay, this is
So
a new motion.
you're still good.
This is a new motion with sort of 3 layers.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So do we all fully understand what we're voting for? I'm still kind of questioning what we're voting for. Okay. All right. Can
These
we?
are backup policies that'll take effect if and when the stay is lifted. Put it out for public comment, bring it back on the September agenda.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. So all in favor of that?
September or just?
September or a future agenda?
September or future agenda when this federal decision is made.
Right.
Yes, the motion was made.
Yeah, I think those were just friendly amendments, but we're
Yeah.
all on board.
Yes. The motion was made, friendly amendments have been added, and now we can vote. All right, all in favor? Okay. Opposed? Okay, that motion passes 7-1.
And just to clarify, Dr. Anderson, the motion is going to be put out to the public. Is that what I heard?
Yes, yes, it will go out to public comment and will be discussed by this board in the future once a decision is made by the federal government. Okay. Yes, we are now ready for financial reports. Mr. Greiner. I know, right?
Good evening. Thank you, Dr. Anderson. You have before you the May financials. You can see our total revenues a little over $200 million at the end of May 31st. Total expenditures close to $189 million. End of May, we had a fund balance of $65.8 million. Still trending to the $55.5 that was approved in the FY25 budget as the beginning fund balance. So you may ask, how is that going to decrease $10 million in June? One thing with I think we touched on this earlier, our July payroll actually goes back to June. We accrue it back to June, so you really have 2 payrolls in June. We only pay one. I mean, we pay one in June, we pay one in July, but the July payroll, the majority of that's for 190-day employees, so that's actually an FY24 expense. Standard across every school district. So typically in June, your expenditures far exceed your revenues for that reason. So that's how we'll trend down. We'll have the June financial statements. We typically don't have those till the middle of September. As a governmental entity, we follow modified accrual accounting methods. So our receivables and payables for the months of July and August, we're allowed, those all go back to FY24. Or we look at our payables and determine if it's an FY24 or an FY25. The accounting standards say you do that for 2 months, and then you can stop doing that at that point. So typically, I will have the July financials for you in September, then we'll go back and do June, probably either September, probably October. We'll have the final financial statements. So fund balance, just to touch on that a little bit more, keeping in mind with the FY25 budget, we're taking a little, I think $6.6 million right off the top of my head out of fund balance, so that'll put us around 20% at the end of FY25. Again, we touched on this. There's the 15% that's been followed for years. It used to be an audit finding. The auditors have not, Department of Audits has not written that up as a finding in several years. We switched, of course, to Malden and Jenkins will be doing our FY24 audit. I can have those discussions with them. Most districts, I know neighboring districts around us are way over 20%. Barrow, for instance, off the top of my head, I think they took about $11 million out of reserves to balance their budget this past year, and they're still over 25%. Cody has typically run 20-25% as well. Those are the 2 that are right off the top of my, that I could think of right off without those kind of the 2 I just know. So again, we'll be around 20 at the end of FY25. Something to keep in mind with fund balance, the 15% was set when the state used to subsidize health insurance pretty much 100%. When I started doing this in 2011, I think the school district was paying a little over $100 per classified employee. Now we're close to $1,600, $1,700 a month. So the state really doesn't subsidize health insurance anymore. TRS has went almost double since 2011. The portion the board has to or contribute. So I think The 15%, a lot of districts just don't really use that as a guide anymore. I think 20%. Other concerns, you look at our federal funding, we've seen a slight cut in our Title I this for FY25. I think that's going to be a trend that's going to continue now that the ESSER funding has gone away. I think there's going to be some tightening at the federal level. A lot of that, of course, depends to, not getting into politics, but as you start following the election cycle, what's going to happen with that federal funding? It's a lot of unknowns in that. So I think it's just a good safeguard. I just wanted to touch on that because since I'd mentioned fund balance, and Dr. Evans and I actually had a brief conversation about that as well. But again, you see the trend with the fund balance projection. We should be at least at 55.5. We're still tracking our ESSER spending. We meet once a month on our ESSER spending. There is an opportunity maybe to reclassify some of our general fund expenditures. If we get to that, we're going to fully expend ESSER one way or another. So that's something we're also looking at. So that might increase the general fund balance a little bit as well. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions y'all might have.
Okay. We'll open up the floor for questions, or just to clarify, do we make a call to vote on this? I can never remember. All right, so let's go ahead and call the motion to vote. Is that?
I mean, it's just a report, so it's not, we're not.
I move that we approve the financial report like we do every month.
Okay. All right, motion's been made by Dr. Yeager. All right, seconded by Ms. Hull. I just could not remember. Thank you, Dr. Yeager. All right, seconded by Ms. Hull. Now the floor is open for questions. Dr. Evans.
Hi, Mr. Greiner.
Yes, sir.
So I don't know if you were privy to the July 16th commission meeting, because I learned some great things from that meeting that day, and hopefully you can help me see through, because my understanding is that we are sitting on this gigantic mountain of money that we somehow got. So can you, we don't have any other way of getting revenue other than what we get from the millage rate, correct?
The two main ways are through the millage rate, through the local property tax digest, and then through the state funding of the Quality Basic Education Act, or QBE.
So basically, you and Dr. Hooker are getting a bunch of scratch-offs and trying to up the fund balance, so that way we can we can fund public initiatives like the sport initiative that we saw in the work session today.
Yeah, and I can give a little more clarity to the Youth Development Initiative. John Ward and I and Drico and Chris Hulse have worked very closely on that this past year, as Dr. Hooker mentioned. So the FY24 budget, y'all allotted, I think that was before I got it. Yeah, that was before I got here. We did $155,000 for the Youth Development Initiative. ACC Gov matched that. We also got $50,000 from UGA. We were the beneficiary of their spring game that they do every year. They pick an organization, so we were the beneficiary. We ended FY24 with $50,000 still in fund balance, a little over $50,000. John decreased the budget for them this year. Like he said, we had to buy all the equipment last year. Football, we had nothing. We bought helmets, uniforms. It was expensive. They're reconditioning the football helmets, which is standard practice. My son played football for 8-9 years, so those helmets just get reconditioned to a certain point, and then of course they have to be replaced again. So John requested a budget of $243,000 this year. Full disclosure, that's what's in FY25 budget. Wasn't sure, with ACC Gov, I did not count on that. I'm glad they approved that. That's great. I think it should be a joint initiative, but did not want to count on that. And with some of the changes they've had, Mr. Williams was kind of instrumental in pushing that. Blaine Williams was instrumental in pushing that through for us last year. So I know they've been having. So that was at John's request that we reduced that budget. I mean, the general fund is fully equipped to accommodate that. I think John's perspective has always been that it should be a joint initiative, and Dr. Hooker and I agree with that if possible.
That's fantastic. So this reserve fund, let's talk about that for a second, because it seems to me that seems to be the issue, the $65 million, which is freaking people out. Right. So is my understanding that the reason that we have that there is because of things that had happened in the past, most recently 2008, when the bottom fell out of the earth.
Right.
And, people went to work on a Friday morning, turned in their lesson plans to be told that they didn't need to worry about that because they weren't coming back on Monday.
Right.
Right? So the reason we have that is because, we want to make sure that that never happens, that we have a continuance, so that way we can make positive decisions right away. So that's what that fund is there for?
Yes. I mean, you'll hear the state refer to that. I don't know if they still do this or not. I know it's the rainy day fund. But it's to cover situations like that. I fully expect, our tax digest is not, there's a lot of uncertainty. We have House Bill 581 that we're going to definitely share some information with y'all. Georgia School Superintendent Association has done a great job trying to track that. Dr. Hooker and I talked about that, and it'll probably be next week's board update, share some information they shared with us. Started trying to run some numbers on that. It's kind of still up in the air what that's going to look like. So that's impact. I think our tax digest is going to eventually, we're going to see a decline at some point. We saw a decline this year. It didn't increase as much. But that's why those funds are there. If there's any federal funding cuts, that you always think, oh, that only affects our Title I program. Well, typically that filters back down into the general fund. Again, it's just Dr. Hooker, I think, asked me a couple months ago, I think it was 3 months payroll expense. That's typically another guide. Our general fund payroll with salary and benefits is about $15 million a month. That'll increase slightly with the raises that were approved for FY25. So if you do that, that's $45 million in fund balance. Say we end up, after we take money out of reserves, this year we're going to be about $49 million. So there's not a whole lot of cushion. It's just in those times like that, just to have that any business I've ever been in, any nonprofit, they always tell you want to have at least three months, typically, cash on hand to pay for expenditures.
Okay, well, so I just wanted to make it clear that we have a purpose for that money. We're just not sitting on it like dragons.
Right.
Okay.
It is for any unforeseen circumstances. Like we fully didn't expect to have any cuts to our Title I this year, and we did. And I think y'all are aware, we did not receive any of our SIG funding for 3 schools that we had. And that amounted to about $400,000. And we were able to cover that through some other methods, but I mean, that's why it's there. You have those reserves in cases like that. So we don't penalize our schools and have to reduce staff at the school. It wouldn't be, letting anybody go, but through attrition, you don't have that position anymore when somebody resigns or leaves the district. So.
Thank you, Mr. Greiner. Appreciate
Yes, sir.
you.
All right, are there any other questions? Okay. Thank you for that, Dr. Evans. I think it's very helpful for the public to hear these things sometimes so that they can continue to understand why we have a fund balance or whatever it's called. Rainy day fund. All right, thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Greiner. All right, we are now moving to item 11, item 10, executive session to discuss. Let's take a vote on the financials. All in favor, raise hand, say aye. Okay, that motion is passed. Thank you so much, Ms. Palmer. Okay, item 10, to move to executive session to discuss matters regarding personnel.
That's all you have to say.
Okay, to discuss matters regarding personnel. I need a motion and a second. Ms. Davis has made the motion. I need a second to move to executive session. All right, motion made by Ms. Davis, seconded by Mr. Denson. We will reconvene after executive session. All in favor? Okay, that motion has passed. Now we will move to executive session. Okay, we can approve both of these items at the same time. That's right. Okay. We are ready to vote on our last couple of items, so we can adjourn. Would someone like to make a motion?
On the personnel?
Do we have to vote?
Oh, we have to come back out of executive
Okay.
session?
Okay, let's go ahead and make a call for a motion.
So I move that we come out of executive session.
Second.
All right, the motion made by Ms. Hull, seconded by Dr. Yeager. All in favor? Okay, we are out of executive session, and now we are ready to vote on our final items.
I move that we approve Personnel Board Report 11 item and 12 Board Report addendum.
Okay, motion made by Dr. Yeager, seconded by Dr. Evans. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that motion is approved, and now we are at item 13 for adjournment.
I move.
All right, motion made and seconded. We are adjourned for the night. Thank you so much, everyone, for your patience tonight.